This week on the Markcast, XFL news first, Reed. XFL news first? What?
Well, we have an official kickoff date, as per league CEO, president, owner, Danny Garcia. Probably not all those titles are accurate, but we have a kickoff date for the XFL, and we have combine dates, we have camp dates, and we actually have a conceivable timeline for 2023.
Are those months or years away?
We're coming in hot with XFL. We also are previewing the East and West Finals. We have a large swath of interviews we have coming up.
The legendary Bob Irving.
Well, it's been very nice. It's been a little bit overwhelming, I have to say. The radio station I work for formally announced my retirement, I guess about 10 days ago now. We thought there should be an announcement so that I don't just disappear and then everybody wonders where I went. Because I've been around for almost 50 years.
Yeah, we talked with Bob about his retirement, 47 years in the game, covering the Blue Bombers. We talked to Andy Bouyoukos.
First, you set out to tell the story, and whatever that be, if it's Cody Fajardo struggling and remembering last year in the West Final when he hit the upright, and how do you tell that story?
Andy will be directing the West Final. He will be directing the Grey Cup. We will be alongside Andy in some regard in Hamilton. And then we have the Krown Gridiron Nation podcast, or roundtable on the podcast with Jim Mullin, Gord, Randall, and Mike Hogan. It gets a little crazy, but we're previewing both the East and West. We have all your CFL stuff too.
People, look it up. The 1986 Eastern Final is the greatest comeback of all time, and it's between Hamilton and Toronto.
Here they go. Here they go, Reed. They're going to make us feel young again.
Yeah. Go back and watch this, man.
Very cool stuff. Also, we're going to talk a little bit about the USFL things that are going on, and another big news story that came out, I think right after we recorded last week. This lawsuit dropped on CEO Brian Woods. We're going to talk about that as well. It's all coming up this week on the Markcast. What's up? What's going on? It's Friday morning. Welcome to the Markcast. We are your hosts. We are here. We are chilling. And we are plotting our way to get into Canada.
We're trying. First off, Paul is back, has power. We were going to record earlier with all the, actually worked out good because we had all the XFL stuff go crazy. And so it actually probably worked out better that I could kind of process this and get everything together now. But it is a late night recording, so we will do our best. We might be a little brief on some things tonight. But I appreciate you hopping on after work, Paul.
Yeah, why not? I'm glad that my internet's back up. I'm glad my power's back up. Apparently there was an explosion at an apartment complex down the street. And that's what knocked me out for the better part of a day. So we're back. We're online. We're ready to go.
Yeah. So we're trying to plot our way into Canada. We're still, it's frustrating. I mean, obviously we have tickets and all that, but we're still waiting on our media stuff. I was going to name the episode tonight, en route to the Grey Cup. I was going to do planes, trains, and automobiles. Maybe you and I as John Candy and Steve Martin. But instead now we're going to do the XFL cinematic universe because a lot of XFL stuff came out today, and we have a lot of CFL stuff tonight, but I'm just feeling a little, I'm feeling a little whatever. So that's what our thumbnail is tonight. That's why if anyone wants to know why we're talking a lot of CFL, we have an XFL thumbnail.
There we go. So on the show tonight, we got Bob Irving, who is the voice of the Blue Bombers. Huge get for Reed. He's retiring after 47 years.
Yeah, Bob's great. We talk about his retirement. We preview the West Finals, all that. I've been hounding Bob since the XFL talks to get him to come on. So It's been 6 months trying to get Bob on.
I'm glad you finally got him.
I will take this last name, Andy Bouyoukos. He is the Grey Cup TV director. He is directing the West Final this weekend with Winnipeg against Saskatchewan. He is also directing the Grey Cup. So I think Andy is a pretty good person to talk to about this kind of stuff. So Andy comes on. We talk a lot about there was a lot of questions. We even got voicemails for Andy, which we encourage, speakpipe.com. Cool. Kyle left a voicemail. We had a couple people that write in that don't understand that we're trying to produce a podcast, but Andy's great, but he's literally going to Hamilton next week to do the Grey Cup. So
very cool stuff. Also, we have the known Gridiron Nation roundtable.
Krown. Remember, it's a Krown grocery store.
Gridiron Nation. I'm sorry. Roundtable. Jim Mullin, Gord, Randall, and Mike Hogan, and thankfully not their social media guys. So there's that.
No, this is good because they produce the shows every week. They do a lot of youth sports. They do a lot of college stuff. And this was kind of the big plan anyway. And then we got Bob and we got Andy. But so we kind of plugged them all together. It's not crazy. It's like a 35-minute, but you got 3 people talking and sharing a lot of knowledge. And then I obviously kind of host. But I think it's a good lively. We try to keep it not like super overwhelming in terms of previewing. So.
Very cool stuff. Big show today. Gearing up for the CFL Western Conference Finals, Eastern Conference Finals, and then, of course, the Grey Cup happening just around the corner.
Yeah,
exciting times.
Just a couple quick notes here. I did the math last week. Remember, we had the whole USFL $60 T-shirts where we were making fun of all that. We have Printful accounts, so I went on to see. It's actually $17.50 is the cost for the USFL to produce the $60 crew fitted shirt. So just when you're, and then I believe they add shipping to that as well. So it's $60. The cost of that is $17.50. We don't need to talk about the 503 Sports. I have a note, but we'll get to our big XFL. I will say we're going to Canada next week. It's going to be Grey Cup Central next weekend. We're going to figure out all that stuff. I am going to, and I was going to talk with Paul about this and then the power and stuff. I have a couple early interviews next week. I'm going to do USFL heavy. Mickey, that did the whole breakdown about the lawsuit and all that with the Spring League. Mickey has a new update. He's talking to Brian Woods next week. Mickey's going to be on. I have another gentleman as well coming on to talk about sports betting and the USFL. And then I believe we're going to have Greg, who's the director of the Grey Cup, coming on. So I'm going to prepackage that. Maybe Paul can add that to the MP3 feeds. You know what I mean? But we'll just, before we go, because it's going to be Canada Central all the way up to the Grey Cup. So that will be, I think we're going to post that on Thursday before we fly out. I'll do a little YouTube thing. So look for that, but I'll plug that as well.
Cool stuff. Cool stuff. So that's happening next week. Got a bonus episode. Apparently that's what's going to happen. The title of the episode, the XFL Cinematic Universe. I don't know what that means. Reed is probably going to tell me what it. Explain that to me.
Yeah, so this came out today. Paul had no power. All this broke down. So Danny Garcia, and I sent Paul the link here so you can follow along. I'll post the video or the photos on the YouTube. We have an official XFL launch date of February 18th of 2023. This all came down. We talked about The Rock flying to New York and Danny and all that back on October 4th. And basically in that meeting, Jeffrey Pollock was still involved and all that. They had you can see the pictures here. They have countdowns for when the combines are going to be, when the camps are going to be, and then when the kickoff is going to be. So I've already had people messaging me like, is this legitimate? What's going on? I mean, this is the owner of the company. This is the owner of the league tweeting this out or Instagramming it out. So I believe that this is the plan we are marching with right now. February 18th is a Saturday. That makes sense. It's the Saturday after the Super Bowl will be. January 9th is a Monday for when the camps would be. Very similar schedule to when the XFL was before. And then June combines are that middle Saturday in June, just like they were before. I think it was like June 20th of that summer before. Does any of that strike you now that we actually kind of have a timeline here, Paul?
Is that years or months away?
Well, see that, yeah, though. That's why I tweeted out because now we know it's been 2023 all along. Are you surprised that with all this back and forth and all the CFL and all the everything and the USFL, that it's basically the same schedule the original XFL had back in 2020?
I'm not surprised. No.
I just thought that they would have I think the April USFL thing actually makes a lot more sense. I would do like April 1st, but I'm surprised if they're doing that early. Seattle's cold, New York's cold, if we're doing a lot of these similar markets.
I mean, people are used to watching football in cold weather anyway, man. That's irrelevant to me. I think it's irrelevant to a lot of people that are going to go see these games. I mean, it was really cold in DC when it was
really cold.
It would have been nice to have a jacket. So, moving on.
Well, no, and so we have a couple. So we have the photo of the countdown, and then also you see the photo of The Rock. So it's kind of the reverse angle. You see 7 of the 8 mannequins. Of course, it's like, do they do this? That's why we say the Marvel Cinematic. Like, it's like all these Easter eggs. Jay Noakes wrote a whole article about this today. I was really inspired. Danny dropping the Easter eggs and, what's going on. And it's like, even in the Instagram, it wasn't the main image. The main image was like her and The Rock and like the Hulk thing, and then if you swiped over, then you saw the XFL stuff. So you're like, it's one of those, like, is she doing this intentional? But I feel like this is Danny's cinematic universe, but the Houston Roughnecks mannequin is not seen in the photo.
Well, I think that's because the possibly the trademark issues that were going on. Maybe they're going back to the well with that. I don't think they're going to move the team out of Houston because they had the original, not the original, but the 2.0 version had such a good rapport with the city of Houston. I don't think they're moving them out of there. But it's going to be interesting to see what they do with the Roughnecks, because I think the reason you didn't see him in that picture is because of the copyright issues.
Yeah, but is it a bad crop? Like, did she not have an iPhone 12? Like, did she not have the wide angle? Like, was she stuck on the just the normal wide? Could we not get it in there? It's just one of those, like, Danny, you're killing us with this, with a lot of the little nuggets and everything else. But I thought that was clever. I thought the cinematic universe. Jay wrote a very nice article on the XFL News Hub about all of that. Last note. If they run the normal season, they're going to be finishing up right in the middle of April, which is when USFL, if it happens to be 2.0, is going to be. So, like, they're not going to compete really in terms of, like, TV landscape, but in terms of coaches, players, all that stuff. I mean, it's clearly going to, you can't go from one to the other. Right.
Okay. I mean, I think it's good. I think it's smart also for fans to, they don't have to. It's not like a football war like the Monday Night Wars, where you have to choose which league you're going to watch. They're kind of put in a way where you can, watch XFL, playoffs start going, and you're like, well, I don't need to pay attention to the USFL right now because, it's week 1, week 2, and then you get into the bulk of the, the playoffs of the XFL. It's over. Then you go back to the USFL and watch that until. I mean, year-round football doesn't sound like a bad idea. Don't ask Arash; he might not like that.
But it does work out because you presumably come out of the Super Bowl, you go right into the XFL, then you'd have the USFL, and that leads right into the May, June, if they're moving the CFL up earlier. It really would be, we're talking year-round football, which seems like a lot. The other thing, coaches and things, prognosticating if the combines are in June. Mark, News Hub today, we were talking, February, March, kind of get the teams in order, same way they did before. When Pep Hamilton was hired, I guess before, they did not have a TV deal yet. So, like, we're still, and I hated going back and looking at all these old timelines and things, like, what did they do before? But now it does seem like they're very much following the same blueprint that they were the first time, which is weird. So,
well, if it's not broke, don't fix it.
Well, I agree. Do you think that they pulled the trigger on February because USFL did April? Does that have nothing to do with it?
I don't think that has anything to do with it. I think this is probably always the approach. I'm assuming. Just going to assume.
Yeah. And so in case you're curious, all the math on these numbers is done from that meeting was on October 4th. So when you see like 587 days or whatever, those are all from October 4th, which if you do the math, puts them all today.
Cool stuff.
Oh, last question. Do you think it's weird that this came out and it wasn't in like a press release?
Yeah, it is. It is weird. But I mean, I guess that's the way people do it now on social media. Like Marcus Stroman announced that he was going to the Chicago Cubs on social media. So it's just the way people think things. People are doing things these days, just releasing it on social media and just, let the internet have a field day.
Okay. Sorry. There you go. That's my last question about that.
All right. This week's games, the semifinal, of course, the Eastern semifinal, Hamilton taking out Montreal 23-12. Remember when Montreal was ahead looking to secure home field advantage? Now they're out. Hamilton is going to travel to Toronto this week, I should say, Sunday. And then Saskatchewan with a last-minute field goal over Calgary, the Stamps, beating them 33-30 to get them to the final against Winnipeg, where they'll probably take another L.
Yeah, Montreal really fell apart. I talked with Bob Irving about this as well because we recorded earlier this week, so we get a lot of post analysis about that. That last minute, like double overtime field goal for Saskatchewan, pretty remarkable. Also, Cody Fajardo had a really heroic performance, I would say, in the West Finals, really kind of willing his team. Later that night when Lamar Jackson was playing, I said Lamar Jackson was doing his best Cody Fajardo impression because Cody looked like Lamar running down the field, kind of juking guys.
You're giving Cody a lot of love when he blocked you. I don't know what's happening with that.
I know. We're working on it.
So with that being said, let's move on to some CFL news. The Blue Bombers have teased a possible return of Andrew Harris in his practice video. Apparently, he was heading out for practice in full gear. He hasn't been on the field since mid-October. It'd be great to see him back. Mike O'Shea, the head coach, has been non-committal about his availability. Still saying it's too early. What do you think?
He came back rocking a mean mustache. He came back like it was one of those, like if you're on the bench for a couple weeks and you grow the beard and then shaved, you have like this big Fu Manchu mustache. That was the most remarkable thing to me. So I'm like, what happened to Andrew Harris? But you want all your horses. I mean, Winnipeg's been resting and we've been resting, and it will be interesting to see the rest versus rust debate here with Winnipeg coming up this week, because they haven't been playing at full strength, since in like a month now, basically.
Very true. The city of Toronto is getting behind the Argos ahead of the East Final. The mayor, John Tory, tweeted out, "Today we raised the Argonauts flag at City Hall ahead of the CFL East Division Final on Sunday." He's also pleased to proclaim December 5th as Toronto Argos Day in the city.
Yeah. The interesting thing about this, he goes, after finishing the season with a record 9 wins, the problem is that it's not a record for the Argos at all. They finished better than 9 wins 17 different times. And they said that actually, John Tory was the commissioner, back when all of this happened. So, the Argos, I will say, Mike Hogan came on this week. Argos are killing it with the social media right now. They are selling out the stadium. They've opened up seating that they normally never do because of the popularity. So I really hope the Argos take this because, not that we don't like the Ticats, not that they are not your team, the Argos, but yeah.
Yeah, interesting. Did he pay attention when he was commissioner of the CFL?
I think this is
it's a question.
Yeah.
Question.
I'm going to breeze past this because I really want to get your take on the Red Blacks. I know there was all the drama this week with Purfoy and all that, and there was an incident where he got arrested and then he got released and all that. This is not the podcast where we like break down like criminal activities or not or whatever, past judgment. So just I hope we can get all past that and the Rough Riders. But I had a big write up about that. But I would much rather get your take about the Red Blacks changing their logo to the Rough Riders colors and basically breaking social media.
Why would you do that?
So the Red Blacks, they said here they decided the only way they would officially declare themselves unabashed supporters of the Rough Riders, they did a poll and they said like, who do you think we should support? And people voted the Rough Riders. So they changed their logo to green, and people lost their ever loving minds about this. So much so that they like had to change it back.
They had a poll and that option won, and then people are pissed. Is that what I'm?
Well, it would be like if I change the, like when I right now I have Taylor Heinicke as like our avatar for the Markcast. It's just like a joke. Like the fact that people are so upset about a social media avatar on like the Twitter account for the Red Blacks is astounding to me. I mean, obviously they have you see all the notes I put here, like this heated rivalry and them not allowing them back in the league and the Grey Cups they've lost and all this kind of stuff. But it's just people lost their minds, and like 3 Down did an article. They had to take the whole thing down.
Weird.
Only in the CFL, all right? I mean, like
only on social media too. Like this would never, like if that happened on the street, no one would care.
Like, heaven forbid the Red Blacks have a little bit of fun. Their team's not in anything, giving some support to the Rough Riders. Like, I mean, they got people talking, but it was like people were vitriolically mad about this.
Haven't you seen anything that like leads you to believe that this is completely well within the realm of possibility? CFL fans being vitriolically mad about something.
Well, that's true. That's true. This is interesting. So at the end of it was like the midway point of the Calgary Saskatchewan game last week. Duke Williams and so Sean Lemons like threw a punch. And Sean Lemons got ejected from the game, like midway through going into the halftime. So he is accusing Duke Williams of spitting on him. No one's like seen any of the, there's a lot of cameras, right? No one's seen any of that. But so Lemon says he felt disgusted and disrespected. And so Duke goes, Sean Lemon, they have the footage, my guy. No need to lie. Nobody feeling sorry for you. The receiver far back, he tagged him on Twitter in that. I mean, this is getting, curious to see if Sean Lemons comes back, right? Like next year, if that's kind of the end of his legacy in the CFL. But Calgary certainly could have used his help in the kind of the second half of that game.
I think maybe like they'll review footage, and if there was actually spitting going on, they might allow Lemon back in. But if there was no spitting going on, it might be the end of the road for him.
Do you have you heard, because there's this going on, and then some hockey player, I guess, bit another hockey player that's kind of like in the news as well right now.
I didn't hear about that.
Oh, Rod's been talking a lot about that on the NHL. How are you handling the MLB shutdown? Are you doing okay?
I mean, it's only been like less than 24 hours. Rob Manfred's an idiot. So, I mean, what else are we going to do? Like, we just, like, I mean, this is not a good time for baseball in terms of the lockout. There was an article that came out that proved that baseball is using two different balls, depending on what they wanted to happen in games. So if like they wanted if they had a primetime game on where it was two teams that weren't offensively good, so to speak.
Wow.
They would roll different balls out that were juiced so that offense would climb. Apparently this is like a big, like, I don't know exactly the blow by blow detail by detail. I haven't looked that much into it. I just saw that there was an article that came out that said that they were using two different balls during the course of the season and they were different weights. And it's just interesting that, like, I have finally gotten over the fact that the Astros cheated. I know why their title wasn't taken away. It was because if you take the 2017 title away from the Astros, the Red Sox cheated in 2018. You can't take 2 consecutive years away. It would ruin the sport of baseball. But all these things that Manfred is doing, like, for example, this lockout, the two different sizes of baseball, 2 different weights of baseballs, I should say. What else? I mean, where to keep going with this crap that's going on with Manfred? Oh, when you start extra innings over the last 2 years, extra innings start with a runner on second.
Yeah. I didn't even know that.
That crap is so stupid. Like, we already have enough problems in baseball as it is. I'm going to say this. It's going to be a very controversial take. Analytics is ruining the game that I grew up playing at every single level. And now you have all this crap on top of it. It's hard. It's really hard to stay in love with the game that I've grown up playing since I was like 6 years old. It's hard.
Well, I was gonna do that in our pre-show, but I did want to get a check-in on you because I did see a lot about that today. I've seen a lot of your baseball posse on Twitter very upset about this. So
we all are upset about this. This is nonsense, and what does they say? What does they say? Par for the course for Rob Manfred. He just doesn't. He doesn't get, like, if you don't want to be the commissioner of baseball, don't be the commissioner of baseball.
Maybe he's pulling a John Tory. He's not paying attention. He doesn't know that the Argos won more than that. Okay, this is interesting. So we have a survey that came out that Canadians don't want the NFL. Speaking of things that they love or don't love, Canadians don't want the NFL in Canada unless the CFL continues.
I don't see why there can't be both.
Yeah, so this is so. Of course, I saw this come out. I don't just read the article; I read a lot of the comments. The issue is there was only 1,500 Canadians surveyed.
It seems like a small sample size.
Seems like a small sample size. It also seems like the breadth of we have plains, we have cities, we have urban areas, we have suburban areas. It just seems like maybe that was indicative of like the entire national field.
And where did they get these 1,500 people from? Can someone tell me, like, were they in one city or were they spread out all over Canada? How did they get in touch with people? These are things that need to be taken into account. Like, if you go and you get 1,500 people, it's 1,500, right? 1,500?
Yeah.
Okay, 1,500 people, and you call everybody in Toronto, and that's your 1,500. You're gonna get some skewed results. But if you call 200 over here in Calgary and 300 in Winnipeg and 200 in Saskatchewan or Regina, what are the likelihoods that some of these numbers will be different? I'm curious to know where they got their sample size from.
Well, exactly. So it's Dr. Randall Bibby, which is it seems like University of Lethbridge sociologist. That was kind of the feedback I got online, but of course, Homer Nation is like running with this, right? Like, this proves that the Canadians are. Like you said, I think both can exist. I think it really depends. But they said 11% said they would support if they meant the demise of the CFL, which was up. I guess they did the survey back in '95, which seems like a really long time to wait. 18% said that they would only support Canada getting an NFL if the CFL continued. 16% indicated they did not want the NFL to come under any circumstances, and 55% were ambivalent on the issue, which is just
sounds like people that are ambivalent to the issue won the poll.
Yeah.
That's the majority right there. People don't give a crap.
So this is where you got to read it, because the headline of the article is new survey indicates Canadians don't want NFL in Canada, but yet 55% of the people were ambivalent to the issue.
That's clickbait. That's a clickbait headline. Like, there was a clickbait headline that came out the other day. It was like, asteroid going to hit Earth. And then you look 2 steps away from the original, 2 steps away from the tweeted articles, like, oh no, it's from this site. You click on that site, you pull it up, all of a sudden it says, oh no, it'll enter Earth's orbit, but still be 2.5 million miles away. Clickbait.
We have another clickbait article we're going to talk about coming up here. Calgary Stampeders, I'm going to be really curious here. We're getting into the end of the season. Everyone's losing money, right? People didn't fill the stadiums as much as maybe they thought they would. Calgary Stampeders are, according to President and General Manager John Hufnagel, they are financially comfortable heading into the 2022 season. He says, obviously, it's not like a bonanza type of business, but you want to save your bills for a rainy day, and we're still on schedule for that. They sold an average of 23,000 people per game, but many didn't redeem their tickets. You can see they were still getting the money for that. They just, the attendance issues are down. So,
I have one thing to say about that. Agatha Harkness wink. We're going to be financially comfortable.
You don't buy it? You don't buy Hufnagel?
I don't buy any of it. And I don't want to be skeptical, but outside of Winnipeg or these teams that had great attendance, how are some of these teams still financially comfortable? I don't know. I don't think the Argos are. They had crappy attendance all year.
Well, and even if you had season tickets sold and the people didn't show up, then you have no merch, you have no you have no concessions, you have no beer, you have no, this all. So you're getting the $50 for the ticket, but you're not getting any money actually in the stadium spending. This is an article. They're committing up to $3 million to the Ontario government for this Grey Cup, which I presumably are attending, and then the 2023 one that they have. This is interesting. So this is a quote why I pulled it. They said, studies have pegged the economic impact of all the activities from the Grey Cup and surrounding events between $80 and $100 million.
Okay.
I don't buy that at all.
Canadian dollars? So what, 60 to 80 million American dollars?
I don't buy that. I mean, please comment, and I know that this year, right, the event schedule is not up to snuff. Josh has been, obviously helping kind of, just set expectations of what's happening, what's not happening. I appreciate all that, Josh McGee, our listener, but I just can't buy that it's $100 million boon for the city that's hosting the Grey Cup that weekend.
I could buy it in a pandemic, in a year that well, first and foremost, the Grey Cup is being played late than it normally does, right?
Yep.
We know that. Second of all, in a year with a pandemic, in this panorama, there's no way this is going to even get $80 million because people might not go because of the pandemic. You got this new Omicron variant out there. Who knows how bad that is? Sounds like a bad cold. But are people going to go and attend? Are people going to spend the money that they're spending? Are they going to spend money because they haven't been making money that much these last 2 years? I don't know if you're even going to scratch 60 million.
Well,
I don't know.
But not even this year. I just mean in the normal year. I can't imagine that it's $100 million boon for a week.
Maybe. I mean, we don't know. We are new to this, despite we're new to this. We don't know exactly how many millions of dollars this will give in the local economy. And honestly, they might be going on old numbers here. That $80 million to $100 million range that he's throwing out. By the way, $20 million is a big range to throw out there. It's I could, my paycheck's going to be either, $1,000 or $20,000.
So this is an article, just in retrospect. So this is an article from February 26th. Says WrestleMania could have $175 million economic impact in Tampa.
Okay, well and I'm sorry, at that point, I believe that.
But so I guess because WrestleMania, you're probably cracking in the same. Okay, I'm here to learn. I'm here to learn.
Because when you talk about a WrestleMania weekend, you're not talking a Grey Cup is one flipping game.
But they have all the stuff around it.
I get it. But you're talking about WrestleMania weekend. If you've never been to a WrestleMania weekend in person,
it's awesome.
not just you just have the WrestleMania, which now 2 nights instead of one. You have all the little indie shows on the side and all little conferences where you can get all the autographs, and you pay for that too. You have your hotels, you have your food, you have your drinks. I buy $175 million for WrestleMania. I do not buy $80 to $100 million for a Grey Cup, especially during a pandemic.
Well, no, but I think this isn't normal years. I think we're getting hung up on the pandemic part. But I think you can do stuff as well. I mean, I think I'm coming more around to the numbers now that I see that WrestleMania is 175. So that's good.
Really?
On a normal year, not this year, it's not going to make 80 million, but in a normal year.
I still don't think
because they do like festivals and music and they do performances and stuff. I mean, they do stuff for Grey Cup.
I mean, if this is Canadian dollars that we're talking like 80, and I'm not knocking the Canadian exchange rate. This is not what I'm doing.
Yeah.
But I'm saying like if it's $100 million Canadian dollars, it's like what 65 to 82 million dollars our dollars. Then I could buy it.
That's
if you're talking Canadian dollars, I can buy it.
Okay. Speaking of, I'm excited about this because we're going to be there. Speaking of. So the Arkells is going to be the Grey Cup halftime show. They also announced that the Lumineers are joining them, which is, the Lumineers. I mean, the Lumineers, that's a big band.
Well, they had one hit, maybe.
Well, but I tweeted, I said, and Arkells liked my tweet. I said, if people around the world listen to the Lumineers as much as my wife, then this is a very big get for the Grey Cup. But Stephen Lee Olsen, who sings What You're Made Of, he's doing the kickoff. All is right in the world. That's all I've wanted this whole time.
There you go.
So the guy, Stephen Lee Olsen, I want to get Stephen Lee Olsen on the podcast even after the Grey Cup. What you're made of. He is going to be playing along. So.
Please stop that.
Anyway, so that's exciting. Last couple of notes here on CFL. This is a phenomenal story. So Chase Claypool, he's a Canadian, right? He plays for the Pittsburgh Steelers. He's a pretty good, I mean, he's doing really good this year. So they got beat by the Bengals, right? 41-10, horrendous loss, arthritic, Roethlisberger. So they were interviewing him in the post-match, and he emphasized they needed better practice habits. And he said that we have music and warm-ups and that, so that's fun. People are dancing, having fun. So I think maybe music would make practice a little more fun and up-tempo, like playing music while they practice. And people were not happy, so that I had some other quotes I deleted. But Mike Tomlin, Mike Tomlin, like, is no BS. He goes, Claypool plays a wideout, and I'll let him do that. I'll formulate the practice approach, and I think the division of labor is appropriate.
The Steelers are a mess.
Oh, they're terrible. I was talking about this tonight. They're like the next, because we watched the Saints game tonight. They're like the next Saints. Like, Drew Brees left, Roethlisberger's going to leave. They have no backup plan at all.
I know. Oh, I mean, the Saints are going to trade for a quarterback, and who they're going to trade for. So.
Well, yeah, he did get her. But Winnipeg Blue Bombers are, they're inducting Bob Irving, Ring of Honor, Hall of Fame. So they're doing that before the Grey Cup. I talked all about that with Bob Irving.
Honor with you. I've got to point that out.
Yeah, honor with you. And then Brian Williams announced today he is a 50-year broadcaster with TSN. He is retiring as well, and they're going to celebrate his retirement in advance of the Grey Cup this year.
A lot of retirements happening up there north of the border. Per Rob Vanstone, low attendance for the Rough Riders semifinals. Apparently 24,001 is the lowest for a Riders home playoff game in the post-Taylor Field expansion era.
Yeah, don't mind Rob with like the super specific. It's not 24,000, it's 24,001. Mitchell Blair, he's another writer. He wrote the fact that the Mosaic is not sold out today should show the CFL they have to do a massive job in the offseason getting people back. So it's just good to see, like, this is still hammering on.
And that kind of helps add more fuel to the fire, like $80 to $100 million. Keep going.
This came out. I just wanted to address this. You've seen a lot of the clickbaity stuff about this as well. Damian Cox wrote an article this week. He is one of the Toronto media, like a Steve Simmons, that maybe is a little down on the CFL. He wrote an article talking like if the Argos, play right in the East Finals, will this be their last game in the Grey Cup because they're going to the XFL or whatever.
Are they?
Well,
for sure.
No, so here's the thing: when a Canadian writer writes about it, and then I saw a lot of, I know you saw a lot of like XFL media bashing about this.
Yep.
What do you want us to do? Like the U.S. sites are going to pick this up. That's why they do this. I mean, that's why like Damien did this article. Can
I ask a question? I just need to ask a flipping question right now. Is it only okay when Canadians criticize anything, mm-hmm. and when Americans criticize something, then there's a problem? Is that seems to be what I'm feeling? Because that exchange on Twitter mm-hmm. between someone who's a CFL fan who lives in America mm-hmm. and that I have blocked all of his accounts. He probably has some more out there. We won't go into that, but like it seems to be okay when all these CFL people, mainly in Canada, say anything negative and they can get away with it. Mm-hmm. But the minute you critique someone and you're American and you haven't been following the CFL like our friend, then all of a sudden, like, you're being accused of clickbait and furthering a narrative that isn't true. It's like we're all allowed to have opinions and we're all allowed to have perspectives based on the information that's provided to us. So why is one group of people allowed to criticize things and the other one isn't?
I would agree. A similar sentiment was made this year when 3 Down wrote the article about does the CFL have an entertainment problem, which was a really well-written article, which was very fair. And I talked with Mark Perry about that, right, with News Hub, and he goes, I would be absolutely murdered online if I wrote that article. And I'm like, you would be. So anyway, I think there was an article that came out about the Argos doing all that, really seems unlikely. It just seems more like Toronto-y clickbait. Hey, people are actually paying attention to the CFL right now. So I want to get some clicks on, like, that's the point of a podcast, is to try to get views of a website. Like, we're all trying to get stuff. Everyone's trying to get clicks.
You know what? Some people don't like their podcast. You can't stop them from that.
Yeah.
So.
Last couple notes, we're going to get out of here. Chris Strevler signed to the practice squad of the Ravens, which is great. He was let go last week from the Cardinals. That was great. And then this was remarkable to me. So the CFL West semifinals topped 1 million viewers. They beat both the NFL early and late games, above 723,000 and then 672,000 for the late game. And the East one, which really was not a great game. Still got 684,000 for the early game with Montreal versus Hamilton. So, I mean, that is tremendous viewership, I think, around the board. And the fact that the West game beat everything and then the East game was competitive with the NFL, I think is great.
Good work. That's all I got to say. I got to give you a pat on the back. And if my soundboard was working, I'd give you a little applause, but it's not.
That's okay.
Oh, well. All right, coming up, we're going to take a break real quick. Coming back, Reed's going to talk to our esteemed panel of guests. Probably going to be another 2 hours of podcast going away right here, according to, this whole panel about Mullin and Randall and Hogan, and then Reed, of course. Who knows how much time they'll be there. But when we come on the other side of the break, we're going to talk about USFL stuff and some other situations regarding the USFL.
And XFL. We have a little more XFL.
More XFL, too.
Well, I am thrilled today to be joined by a legendary broadcaster in the CFL community, Bob Irving. How are you doing today?
I'm doing fine, Reed. We're all here in Winnipeg looking forward to the West Division final this weekend, Sunday against the Saskatchewan Roughriders. They won the semifinal game yesterday, and the Winnipeg-Saskatchewan rivalry goes back many decades. It's one of the best in the Canadian Football League. So this West final is really, it's a promoter's dream.
Yeah, and I want to get your thoughts a little bit on the games as well. But just first off, thank you for taking the time. I know overwhelming response, with you announcing, stepping away at the end of the season. What has it been like for you the last couple of weeks? I mean, just outpouring of support from everybody.
Well, it's been very nice. It's been a little bit overwhelming, I have to say. The radio station I work for formally announced my retirement, I guess about 10 days ago now. We thought there should be an announcement so that I don't just disappear and then everybody wonders where I went, because I've been around for almost 50 years. But, it's been kind of nice. Lots of people have come out and congratulated me and said very nice things. And so it's been busy and nice. And now I'm just looking forward to the game, what'll be my final game on Sunday. And like I say, it's the kind of game that, if you can't get excited for this one, then it's time you packed it in. So I'm really fired up about it.
It is remarkable that, and I had listened to your talk with Ed Tate before, with the Blue Bombers, and that, you maybe thought this decision was coming. It is crazy that, Winnipeg, this team that you've been so associated with, right, for nearly 5 decades now, the run of a lifetime, right, having this wonderful season, right, dominating. What has it been like tracking them this last, what are we at now, week 16, 17?
Well, it's been fun. It's been as enjoyable a season, I think, as I've ever had, because, they won the Grey Cup in 2019, then 2020 was canceled. And that was real downer because we knew they'd come back with a really good team. And then as it turns out, they brought back most of the players from 19 for this season. So I think we all knew, those of us close to the team, we knew they were going to be good. But we didn't know how good, right? So they get off to a 2-0 start, then they lose a game in Toronto and lose quite badly. And they're 2-1, and then they reel off 9 wins in a row, and they're basically outscoring teams 2-1 or more in every game they win. So it's been a magical season. They lost their last 2, but they were meaningless games in the standings. I'm convinced they'd have finished 13-1 had it not been for that. But 11-3 is as good a record percentage-wise as a Blue Bomber team has had since 2001 when they were 14-4. So, yeah, it's been a magical year. It really has. Now all they have to do is finish it off the right way, because if they don't, you know how that works, right?
Well, I know it's weird, and I think the way the media landscape is shifting, right? We're, in the years to come with, streaming and everything else, but where you with the radio, the broadcasting have been so associated with this team, right? I mean, so many fans of this team, of the league, but especially of the Blue Bombers, knowing your voice, right? Your call, along with some of these, life, people remember, where I was when this happened or that happened. What is it like for you to be associated with so many of those cool sporting, memories?
Well, it's really cool. It's certainly one of the highlights, I guess, of my career is when people come up to me, and there's one game that they replay my call on more than any. It was a game in 2006 when the Bombers scored a touchdown, 100-yard touchdown pass in the final play of the game to win a game in Edmonton that, for all intents and purposes, was lost. And they've been replaying that a lot. But moments like that are fun to remember. And when I hear those calls, and there's a few others, they kind of run together after a while, I have to say, because I've done between 800 and 900 games. So there does tend to be, people say, what's your favorite game? Well, it's pretty hard to pick out a favorite game or a favorite moment. But I've been thinking a lot about the time I've been doing the games, all the different coaches and the good moments, the not so good moments. There's a lot of, my memory bank is full. Let me put it that way.
It is. I mean, it's because it's so cool. I mean, sports, the way our society is and the way we remember and live through it. And, these calls and these moments exist, for years and years, where it's just so ingrained in the way that we as a society kind of operates. And just to have, you associated with those memories forever, I just think it's a really cool thing, right, as a broadcaster. Well,
there's no doubt that it is. I've had, I don't know how many people come up to me and say they grew up with my voice on the radio and they remember listening by the campfire. One of the kind of funny stories was told by a former premier of Manitoba at an event I was at a few years ago. And he said during the summer when the Bombers were playing, if you were in a campground somewhere in Manitoba, and we have tons of campgrounds here, if the Bombers were playing on a Friday or Saturday night, all you could hear was the radios blaring in the campgrounds when people were listening to the game. And so my voice was resonating through the pines all over this campground. And those things are kind of fun to hear about that. And, again, I'm the guy who was lucky enough to be doing those games. It could have been anybody else, but it just happened to be me. And to be associated with one team for so long, you really get close to that team. It's impossible not to develop an affinity for them. There's just been so many wonderful moments. And, in particular, 2019, when it all came together in that memorable Grey Cup win, that's one I'll always cherish because it was near the end of the line for me. But more than that, the people in charge, I have tremendous respect for now. And it took a while. I mean, they've been building since 2014. And the first 2 seasons under Mike O'Shea, the head coach, were kind of tough. But Wade Miller, who is running the program now, stuck with it because he knew he had the right people in charge. And it's difficult to be patient in pro sports, as you well know. But he was patient, and it paid off big time.
Being inducted into the Ring of Honor this year, right? I was reading, right? The formal ceremony is going to be taking place before the game, right? This weekend?
Right. That's right. Yeah, they're going to unveil the banner. That was one that caught me off guard last week. I said to Wade Miller, I don't deserve this. I think it's, for players and coaches. And I do believe that. Now, I don't mean to be ungrateful because I'm very grateful that they see me in that light. And so I'm proud and honored that they would see me that way. And the ceremony is going to be just before kickoff on Sunday.
But I mean, it speaks to, like I said, just kind of it's all part of the legacy of the program. I mean, as much as a coach or a player is, the people that are broadcasting this, that are storytelling, right, to everyone watching. I mean, especially for as long as you've done it, to have someone for so many years be associated. I mean, you can look at other broadcasters and say, for this decade or that time or whatever, but to be, span nearly 5 decades associated with one franchise.
Well, and the Bombers are a big deal here, Reed. They're woven into the fabric of this community. They've been in existence since 1930, so they're almost 100 years old. And it's important to this community what this football club does. When they play a game and they win, everybody's got a smile on their face. And when they lose, people are grumbling and why did they do this? Why didn't they? Well, you know what that's like. It's not unique to Winnipeg, but this is a smaller city, just under 800,000 people. And this football club has been a very, very important part of the makeup of this city. And so again, it's been my good fortune to be the one who is, I guess, more closely associated to it in the media than anybody else.
I want to talk a little football. I want to talk a little, recap here. We're recording this earlier in the week. It's going to air, Friday, but I want to get thoughts on the games over the weekend. I saw some of your tweets about the Trevor Harris and the turnovers and things from that first game. Kind of takeaways from that. And then I want to touch on the West semifinal as well.
Well, the Eastern semifinal, which Hamilton won, Montreal probably outplayed them in many aspects of the game. But as you well know, when you turn the ball over, it's just deadly in football. And Trevor Harris had 2 fumbles, costly fumbles. The first one changed the entire complexion and momentum in the game. And I'm not blaming Harris. Hey, stuff happens, right? It was a snowy day and cold, and the ball's tougher to hang on to. Ball security, though, is so critical in weather like this in particular. So those 2 turnovers paved the way for Hamilton to win and beat Montreal. And most people thought Hamilton would come out of the East this year after what they did in 2019 when they were 15-3. And they've had an up and down year, but now they'll play in the final in Toronto. And then the game yesterday in Regina, or Sunday in Regina, was a classic, a Western CFL playoff game. It went to overtime, and we have these little mini games in overtime. It's not like overtime in the NFL. It's a little different here where you start at the other team's 35-yard line and try to score, and back and forth, but it went to 2 what they call mini games, and one Calgary's field goal kicker missed a field goal, and then Saskatchewan's all he had to do was make his, which he did. So 33-30 was the final, and it was just a knockdown, drag them out. It was a beauty of a game, and I know the Bombers would be sitting back and reveling in it because the 2 teams are beating themselves up, right? And one of them's going to have to come in here to be Saskatchewan next Sunday.
Yeah, you really felt for the Calgary kicker, right, Pineda, right? I mean, you really felt, and you could just see, because I was glued watching both games all day. I mean, you could just see, he would miss the one, and then it was like holding back tears. He'd come out, he'd get one. I mean, even earlier in the game before they got to overtime.
Well, he missed 3 of 8. He made 5, but he missed 3. And during the season, he made 44 of 48. He's one of the most successful field goal kickers in the history of the Canadian Football League. His percentage is up around 88% career. And so he has this, almost hard to explain day. And the conditions were good. The playing conditions were good. But he missed 3 of them, including it was a 47-yarder, I think, the one he missed in overtime. So it certainly wasn't a gimme. And I give Dave Dickinson, the Calgary coach, a lot of credit. He said, hey, this guy's made a lot of big kicks for us over the years. There's no way we're throwing this on him. But it played a huge role in the outcome of the game. And you're right. The shots on television of him, he was in anguish. He really was. You had to feel badly for the guy because he's had such a wonderful career. And I don't know if he's going to be back next year or not. He's been around a long time, but it'd be a horrible way for it to end for him.
Yeah, really seeing like holding back tears because, people watch, it's pro athletes, it's all these things. But I mean, they're human beings. And I just couldn't imagine going out there and, just wanting to go in a hole and cry for a minute just because all that pressure.
Well, being a kicker in football is really one of the loneliest jobs in the world. You may be called on once a game to do something, and it could be the difference between winning and losing the game. And so the pressure on those guys is excruciating. And I know it's funny. A lot of the former Bombers that I know kind of look down their noses at kickers. They don't consider them real football players. They understand how important they are, but they scoff at whether or not they're actually quote unquote real athletes. But I'll tell you, when it comes to deciding a game, they play as big a role as anybody. And when they make it, they're heroes. But if they miss a key one, they're the one person who will make the difference between winning and losing that we can all see, that's visible to us all. And so for Rennie Paredes, is the way you say his last name, it was a down day for sure.
Looking, and I think that first game, obviously the snow and everything played a factor. But when it came to the second game, it really felt like Cody Fajardo. I know there's been the back and forth this year. He's been talking, about the teammates, and we need to have more people making plays. But it seemed like he finally was like, I've had it. I'm taking this on my shoulders. I'm running the ball. Really felt, and even Bo came in with a lot of energy too. Did you feel that added,
Sure.
like it felt more like a playoff game than the Hamilton one a little bit?
Well, for sure. And, athletes at this level always say that, they play as hard as they can play every time out. And I believe that. But there is an extra bit of juice that comes in a playoff game. I don't think anybody would dispute that in any sport. And I thought Bo Levi was sharp. He threw a couple of interceptions, but he also put some great plays together at the end of the game when it mattered most. And Fajardo, I'm a Fajardo fan. There are some fans in Saskatchewan who aren't as high on him as others might be. But I love the way he plays because he'll do anything to try and win. He's not the greatest passer in this league, but he takes off and runs with the ball, and he puts himself in peril. He'll take people on. He doesn't always slide. He's a courageous player. And so I have a lot of time for Cody Fajardo, and I know a couple of the games, not in 2019 so much, but I guess it was 2019. He would escape the pocket and really give the Bombers nightmares. And that's the one area where he can throw a real scare into you, because if he breaks contain, he's able to run very effectively. And he did that yesterday, and that played a big role in Saskatchewan winning the game.
It just seemed like he really was playing with a chip on his shoulder in a good way of like, we're doing this. Like, I've been frustrated all season. We're here. I could just feel that through the TV watching the game unfold.
Yeah, he plays like that all the time, Reed. He does. He's fearless and he's tough. And, I think he puts a lot of pressure on himself from what I can see, because when things don't work out, he's very despondent and really takes it personally. But yeah, yesterday he was going to will that team to victory and do whatever was required. And I referenced his passing. Well, when they needed a drive at the end of the game, when they were down, he put together a 75-yard drive, and he threw some beautiful balls. So he played very well yesterday, and he's going to be a big, big factor in this game, the West Final coming up on Sunday.
Yeah, so now I really want to, so we've all been building to this. I want to get your thoughts on this now, because, the West all year, we're BC fans. I've been cheering all these different things. It's always felt like whoever is there is going up against just the buzzsaw, right? We're walking into the pit in Star Wars or whatever. We're walking into the whatever, right? And so, what is Saskatchewan's chances? And I didn't say that right because my braces. But what are the Rough Riders' chances against the Blue Bombers realistically here on Sunday?
Well, they're going to be big underdogs. I don't know what the betting line will be. I would think 8-10 points. The Bombers didn't lose a game at home all year. They ran roughshod over most. They've won, I think, 17 of their last 18 games here at IG Field, which is their home stadium. They beat Saskatchewan twice this year and beat them quite handily in Regina and then back here. So Winnipeg is going to be an overriding favorite. The Bombers are healthy. The one question is about running back Andrew Harris, who's been a key to their success in recent years. We'll know about him probably not until game time, maybe. But otherwise, they're unbelievably healthy coming off a bye. Saskatchewan has a chance, of course. I can go back to 1989 when a 16-2 Edmonton team got beat by a 9-9 Saskatchewan team in the West Final. So you can't rule anybody out. But I think the Bombers are going to have to give this game away if they're going to lose it. Let me put it that way. I really believe that. They're going to have to turn the ball over and do things that are uncharacteristic for them to lose the game. Could that happen? Of course it could. But they're heavy favorites, and they should be heavy favorites. Could Saskatchewan win? Of course. But I don't like their chances very much.
Do we worry that, rest versus rust and having the bye week and, resting the players before, and we're protecting Zach Collaros and doing all these things and not really, obviously you don't want to risk anyone getting hurt, but not building that momentum the last couple of weeks?
Well, there are different ways to look at that. And you can make an argument, I think on either side. Should they have played the regulars more in those last two games? Certainly the last game in Calgary, they were up 9-0 with 6 minutes to go. And if they'd left some of their frontliners in, they'd have won the game. But Mike O'Shea wanted to give the backups a chance to play in a pressure situation because he thought it would have value down the road. So I don't think that having the bye and having lost those last two games will have any impact. I really don't. And if they lose the game on Sunday, then somebody will bring that up for sure and say, well, they shouldn't have taken their foot off the gas. Those are the second guesses that will happen. But no, I don't believe it will impact them at all. This Bomber team is so singularly focused on week to week, game to game, preparation, no nonsense, all business, that I don't see anything disrupting that incredible focus that they have. And a week off, I think, will only help them because they got healthier.
Is that a coaching that has gotten them to that point? Is that the players they've acquired? I mean, what is it that causes them to have that?
Well, it's entirely Mike O'Shea, the head coach, and his mantra to them. And he surrounded himself with leaders, veteran leaders who have adopted that approach and then pass it on down to the other players to the point where Mike rarely has to say anything to the players. And he's not a guy for big speeches anyway. That's just not his style. But he's developed what we like to call in sport, you've heard it a million times, a culture here, where the leaders kind of keep everybody in line and you either fit in here or you're on the road out. And so, it's a team that really self-governs itself with the players who are the leaders, making sure that everything is being done right. And that all comes from Mike, though. He's established that culture here. And I tell you, it worked very well at the end of 19, and it's working beautifully right now.
Walking into the game Sunday, getting ready to call, right? Your last, are we just taking it day by day? Have you given any thought to like what that's going to feel like, personally?
Well, I think more and more about it because people ask me about it all the time now. And so I'm thinking about it for sure. And I know I'll think more about it when we get closer to game time. But as I tell people, I'm just ready to go. I've done this for almost 50 years and I still enjoy doing the games and I know I'll miss it, but I'm 71 years old and it's time to move on. My wife and I have other things in summers that we'd like to do, including me playing more golf. She's standing off in the background here. Let's do this. But no, it'll be kind of I don't even know how I'm going to feel at the end of the game. I've thought about it and I'm not sure. During the game, I think it'll be fine. But when we do our post-game show and then we're at the end of that, and I know that, the finality will kind of set in that I don't know, I'll see. But like I say, I'm ready for it. Whatever it is, I'm ready for it, and let's get on with it kind of thing.
Last question for me. Thank you for spending the time that you have. Where are you going to be watching the Grey Cup? Are you going to be at home with your wife? I mean, what is the plan for watching Winnipeg potentially here go back to back?
Yeah, well, no, I'll be in Hamilton. I'll be at the Grey Cup. We don't have the broadcast rights for the game. That's owned by TSN. On a national level, so we can't do the game. Our station, CGOB, can't do the game. But I'll be there covering this would be my 49th Grey Cup game in a row that I've attended. I've attended every one since I arrived at CGOB in 1973. So I'll probably be in my hotel room because if the Bombers are in it, we will do a post-game show immediately after the game, which we would have to originate from an off-site location, which would be our hotel room. So that's probably where I'll be if they're in the game, and I'll be silently cheering. I've told people this before. When I broadcast a game, I'm as objective as anybody could be, but I hope the Bombers win every time they play. And this is one game in particular, if they're in it, that I'll be hoping against hope that they win.
Well, we will be in Hamilton as well if our paths should choose to cross. I hope we could say hi. But I really appreciate your time today. I know that our listeners, it will mean a lot to hear from you. Any final words? Anything else before we let you go?
No, I've had a wonderful time doing what I do. I've had a very satisfying career. I have no regrets about anything. I've enjoyed every minute of it, and I'll cherish that till the end of time. And now I'll set my own schedule every day of every week of every year that I'm still alive after this is all over.
Awesome. Bob Irving, thank you again so much for your time and putting up with my nonsense of emailing you. I really, really appreciate it.
No, my pleasure, Reed. Thank you.
Well, I am excited today. We have Andy Bouyoukos here. He is. I've been looking at your Wikipedia or your LinkedIn page this morning, kind of prepping and everything. An extensive 34-year career here, many different events. First off, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. You caught me when I have a little bit of downtime, getting ready for football this weekend and next weekend.
Yeah, so Andy is the TV director of the CFL on TSN. Andy did the Saskatchewan West semifinals last weekend. Andy is traveling to Winnipeg this weekend, and then we'll be in Hamilton for the Grey Cup. So needless to say, quite a good swath of games and high-profile events that you've been involved with and will be involved with coming up.
Yeah, I've been fortunate in my years at TSN to get to work on a lot of stuff. This is Grey Cup, I want to say 11 out of 12. I took 1 year off. I used to do the pregame and the halftime, and then I kind of took 1 year away from it and then came back as the game director and this will be my 6th year as the game director. And I do the World Juniors. That's always fun over the holidays. And I've done a bunch of stuff.
But I mean, that's exciting. And it doesn't necessarily need to be, CFL related, but what would you say is one of your proudest moments in terms of TV broadcasts being involved in?
Well, that's funny because one of my most memorable, and I would say, I was very pleased with it, is covering the Expos. And it was when David Cohn was still in New York and the Expos played in Baltimore on a Saturday. And then we had to go Sunday to New York, and it was jump on a train after the game and get to New York. We were doing the game, and it was the day of the British Open, going extra holes with Padre Harrington. So our game was pushed. It wasn't pushed back. We were still doing the game, but it wasn't. They didn't join us yet. Well, they joined us at about the 5th inning, and I remember asking John Russin, our stats guy, I said, "Hey, has anybody been on base?" He's like, "No." I go, "Is anybody like anything like?" No Expos at all. He goes, "No." So suddenly we realized, we got a perfect game in front of us. And the first 5 innings, nobody even saw. So, you start getting a little like everything you do is magnified, right? Because now you go, now there's so many more eyeballs that may have, now back then internet was still a new thing. So, but, people that are flipping by and all of a sudden realize, hey, it's a perfect game. That to me was one of the fun things because you didn't expect anything of it. David Cohn versus the Expos, and you went, there's just going to be I can't say what I want to say. It's going to be a beating. And so next thing you know, it's not just a beating, but it's a perfect game. So that's one of the most memorable. There's some World Juniors that come to mind, some curling events that come to mind. And obviously the Grey Cups, the Ottawa one, especially because, it was our first one with snow. So.
Well, it's cool to me, and I'm, someone with a broadcast background, just all the other people, that don't necessarily get all the credit, right? I mean, I'm always the one behind the camera, right? Back in news, we're going to have Bob Irving on this week as well, talking, and just all these memorable sporting moments, right? And we had Chris Edwards on, your producer counterpart, but where you're a part of this, the way that we, look at sports in our society, you're part of this moment in history that you captured. And that is how people will remember it playing out is how you guys captured it, right? Talk about that. And just, you see, and then we've been gotten engrossed in all the CFL stuff over the last year, but all these moments over the years and knowing like, oh yeah, I was there for that, or I remember that, or that was a cool thing.
Well, it's funny because when you set out to tell the story, and whatever that be, if it's Cody Fajardo struggling and remembering last year in the West Final when he hit the upright, and how do you tell that story? And then and that to me, that day, I mean, the easiest thing to do is find the guy celebrating, but it's the angst on his face. It's a team losing. It's playing a double overtime at a World Junior hockey game and losing. The pictures of the teams that have lost, I find are always, I mean, celebration shots are great, and you can't go wrong with those. But the emotion of losing a game, you know, a one-off like a Grey Cup or a World Juniors, where you know, it's not a series, are the ones that are the most memorable for me. That's how I always remember them.
It's weird because it's like you look at sports and you look at these people like, you know, bigger than life, right? All this. I mean, I remember, was it one of the early, we watch NFL too, but one of the Ravens games earlier this year, I think they were going against the Chiefs, and you see Harbaugh like yelling at Lamar Jackson, right? Like, do you want to go for it? You know, and you see him like making that decision real time, right? And it's so just, you know, dictates the game, right? And that was the director and the production staff, you know, capturing those moments, and you're able to like live that back. It's just makes it feel so much more real than maybe it would be on TV.
Yeah, I mean, you know, when you go into a television show, you always have, I mean, it's not like a film where you can have storyboards and create, you know, you just sort of, you want to put the camera people and their assignments in the right position to succeed. And that's always challenging on it. Probably football would be the most challenging if you're doing it with like 12 cameras. When you're doing it with 40, you know, you probably have a pretty good coverage of the whole place. When when you start doing it with 12, you got to, you know, guys have 4 or 5 different assignments, and it's not, we don't travel a ton of people. We travel a group of people as far as camera people, but we've, over the 9 years, and we're fortunate because it is only 9, it'd be nice to be 10 for sure. Over the 9 teams in the cities that you go to, you train people and you get them up to speed. But, you know, when you're able to capture something like that live, like the coach freaking out and you know, any interaction with players and all that, that's just great, because that's what people want to see. Now, you know, I'm a fan of the game, and that's the hardest thing for me. I think only once in my years of doing this did I sort of sit back and watch, because you don't have time. I mean, honestly, I remember saying to our producer, John Hines, we were doing a Montreal game, and, you know, it was Travis Lulay playing for BC back then, and he made some great pass. And I just said, wow, he is really good, because you never really sit and think about that, because you're always looking at, I mean, you're looking at 12 monitors in front of you and assuming that the guy doing the play-by-play is doing what he's supposed to do, so you can see what else is coming.
And it's so, you know, most of my career was done in live production, but, you know, where you're always, that it's one step ahead. You know, you always have at least one step ahead. You know, okay, what's coming up next? What am I getting queued up? What am I getting this guy that you're almost not even, okay, that's on. Now I got to go to the next thing. You know, you're not even really even able to, I think it was when we had Chris Edwards on, was saying that, you know, he has to go back and like rewatch the games after just to see like, you know, how did we do? You know, how did that feel kind of in the real time?
Yeah, I mean, we're fortunate now that everything's on demand, so it's easier to rewatch. Back in the day, we used to record it. We'd record our intercom, and we'd find out. I kind of know right away if I didn't like something. I'm like, you know, I'll leave the game and go, oh, why did I do that? Why didn't I do that? And, you know, so I think we're our own worst critics. Now, people would argue that no, they're more critical than we are. But they don't know the situations, right? So I would say watching back games is very important. You know, we learn a lot from them, understanding, you know, and watching the NFL. I mean, we're not fooling anybody. We watch a lot of football, and, you know, the amount of stuff that the NFL has and to their, you know, at their disposal is different than the CFL. And, you know, so that's why the playoffs and the Grey Cup get magnified, because we are able to add things to, you know, cover the game more.
Is there anything specifically about the CFL, more turnovers back and forth, size of the field, anything that makes it more challenging or unique to, you know, to cover and direct versus, I mean, obviously hockey, things different, but just the way CFL is laid out?
Well, the field being wider is a challenge for, I guess, your game cameras, because you'll find that in the coverage in an NFL game, it's so much more compressed because the field aspect, right? And guys in the CFL, first of all, the amount of motion, you want to try to get to the game camera early enough to see all of that. And there's times, and I'm not going to lie, there's times that you fall in love with a close-up and you're late getting there, and that's not fair to the viewer, and I understand that, and we try to concentrate on that. And but I think the width would be the biggest thing. The length doesn't really kill you because it's 10 more yards of play. The 20 yards in the end zone are interesting because it is deep, so there is a little more. And the upright being where it is, obviously the Regina Stadium and Saskatchewan Roughriders probably didn't want that upright there when he hit it and didn't go to the Grey Cup, in 2019. That's always a challenge as far as for like when we bring in a spider cam, they now have to deal with an upright being there. So they can't really get to where they want to be. But overall everything else is the same. One more player, but that doesn't really matter. You got the 2 and outs sometimes can be difficult when you're looking for people and you don't, and you're trying to find a player coming on or going off, but everything else is the same.
Yeah. Cause I just think, we're, the quicker, a little bit quicker play clock, right? Moving everything. It is hard to we're showing the replay. We're trying to show the next thing. And like you said, it's not fair to the viewer sometimes. I get that because we cover a lot of alternative, we cover this internet football and stuff. And it is they're doing all these kooky but it's we got to watch the game. We got to see we got to see everyone line up. We got to see what's happening. So it's that weird balance.
Yeah, the one thing I did learn early on, and I've always kept it in my head, is don't just assume that the viewer knows what's happening. You got to show them what's happening, and you can't always. And you got to be fair to the sport. You can't, if you're covering figure skating, a close up of the person skating when it's all about skating makes no sense. So in a football game when they break the huddle, you want to see where guys are going, and that's. Again, it's a fine balance, and you're right. The play clock is ridiculously fast. I know that a lot of guys that have gone and worked down in the States and done some games and come back go, wow, what a difference. It's an eternity. And I said, yeah, it's a big deal. You can get in, 2 replays, a cool graphic, 5 close-ups, and you're still got 10 seconds on the play clock. And in the CFL, you're a play happens, you go to the receiver for 2 seconds, you go to the guy that threw the ball, you're getting a replay. If you want 2 or 3 looks, if you get lucky enough to get a second or third look, you better get to that ball, at the line of scrimmage, because there's nothing else you're going to do. So it's just training yourself, and it's hard to do because you want to push the envelope, but you got to find that fine line.
What have you, and obviously, like you said, you concentrate on the games, but what have you made of the CFL season this year, coming back? We talked with Chris about it as well, the entertainment value, were all the games up to snuff? Obviously, the West semifinal was, phenomenally entertaining, but what have you kind of thought so far, general thoughts?
Well, the fact that they played is great. I know that a lot of people, thought they should have played last year. I don't know if they could have. Because it is such a fan-based league. As far as the games, I was very nervous about the start of the year because without playing so much, if you're a football player and you've trained all your life, you're probably still doing some sort of training. That I felt was a no-brainer. But I was surprised at how many people retired from the league. And so the games, some of them were great. Some of them were I'm like, there's a lot of guys kicking that are missing stuff. And who would have thought that, in the West final, the guy that was money all year for Calgary would have missed 3. So, the games there have been some dogs. I'm not going to lie. And those are harder to do, because you want to make them entertaining. And that's the thing is you gotta try to entertain. And and the best way to entertain is to have a good game. It's easy. Yeah. It's easy if it's a good game.
Well, it's funny, we watch a lot of wrestling, and that's always the thing is wrestling, and they still have this problem with, boring things. It's you have the opportunity to book everything, right? We're sporting, if we could book everything, it would come down to a double overtime missed field goal kick every single time, right? And yeah, you watch some of these games, and obviously the NFL is guilty of it too, but there'll be I know that. Well, anything will happen in the CFL. I'm gonna be like down 17 points with 3 minutes left. Like, this would barely be the craziest last 3 minutes I've ever. I understand that happens, but it is funny. Like, some of the announcers sometimes really trying to, it's heavy lifting. It's not easy.
Yeah, I mean, I that's where they earn their money, right? It's to do a 12-yard curl, and to illustrate that and explain that versus a 41-0 game that they have. Like, you've kind of run out of things to talk about. And, I don't know, and shooting. I mean, that's the glory of that. And my job is you still have to shoot the game. So even though it's a blowout, you're still covering the game. I find that for the announcers, that would probably be the toughest thing is covering a blowout. So
we joke. Do you, as a director, do you interact as much with the talent, or is that more just Chris's job in terms of the on-air broadcasters?
We do. I mean, I don't. I let the producer do a lot of it. If we're going to a certain shot of somebody, I'll let them know and things like that. But he breaks down graphics and replays for them, and I'll do the live portion of it. So if it's live, if Glenn Suter is talking about a player, usually I'm hoping that I'm thinking along the same lines as him, and I got that player on the screen as he's bringing up, as he's discussing it, or I'm foreshadowing, and you're trying to, they're talking about the defense. You're trying to get a idea of the defensive coordinator and just stuff like that. So I'll pipe in a bit, but I don't talk to them to the extreme that the producer would.
Going into this weekend, in terms of, all the Winnipeg and everything all year, just this absolute dominant performance, thoughts on this matchup? I mean, obviously you're going to be, with the headset on and everything else, but thoughts about the game?
Well, I mean, I've been fortunate to cover an awful lot of Labor Day Classics or Banjo Bowls. And, right now, I think the forecast was there's possibly flurries. And so now it's just amped up because, people usually say that the CFL doesn't go until Labor Day. Now, this year was a little different because of the time constraints and stuff. But I would have to say that this is a Labor Day Banjo Bowl on steroids. Like, people are going to be going crazy. For Winnipeg to go back to back, if they win, to even get to the Grey Cup. I'm not saying that they're winning the Grey Cup, but to even get to the Grey Cup is awesome. Like, I mean, you talk to any team and it's more that, like, it's funny. Somebody said, the rookies get there and they think they're going to get there every year. So I think about it and I go, what if Winnipeg makes it again? Like, the guys that started there in 2019 and are still there going, well, this isn't that bad. But ask the guys that were there prior, right? How many years they went and how long it took. And then if it's Regina, or Saskatchewan, you look at a guy like Dan Clark, who's the center, and he's going to probably he'll be fairly emotional because, I mean, they made it there, a few years ago. And he was also part of the 13th man, too many men. Like, so to get to a Grey Cup, is going to be awesome. And I think the environment in Winnipeg, much like the environment in Regina, is going to be great. I think the game should be awesome. I have no prediction because, I just don't know. I enjoy covering both teams. I think that it's going to be good, and hopefully the viewer is entertained.
So we've talked a little bit about the crossbar, right? I mean, it's like every week that this is brought up. I mean, truly, it's remarkable that something, it happened 2 years ago, right? It's still brought up. So you were also part of the 13th man.
Yeah, I didn't do that game. I was part of the pregame group, but I was there for it. Yeah.
What was, why, and my wife will be watching this and saying, like, what is happening here? But walk me through a little bit of that, because I do think that's also brought up almost as much as the Cody crossbar thing.
Well, I mean, somewhere in that, on special teams, they missed a guy. I guess at one point they discussed going for the block, and then they realized, the guy that goes to the end zone for the return, went to his usual spot. So somewhere in that, understanding, there was one extra guy. You got, hey, wait, there's 13 guys, not 12. so the flag is thrown after they missed the field goal. Well, guess what? They tack on 5 yards and they get to kick it again. So to go from the pure emotion of he missed and, this is awesome, we just won, to, oh my God, what just happened? You see it on the faces of the players and in the stuff that was captured by Paul Hemming, who was directing that game. And you just go, that's an incredible moment, and one that, a lot of people that when they talk about Grey Cups remember that moment. So,
so the Cody thing, is it surprising to you that that's still brought up so much? And I know, was it one of the Labor Day games this year? He hit it again. It was one of the, right. It was one of the, I mean, does it surprise you that that's still brought up so much?
Well, here's the thing. I don't know. I mean, it's hard to tell if that ball would have been caught. Right. And so that's the first thing that goes through my mind as a viewer, fan, person that directs the games. My first thought looking at everything wasn't that going to be high anyway? Right. But am I playing devil's advocate, or is it just my opinion? Because everybody's entitled to an opinion. So I think that, it's kind of like angst for them. Like they want to, it was the 13th man till they won a Grey Cup. Now it's the crossbar till they win a Grey. You know what I mean? I'm not saying it's an excuse, because I would never say that. It's just in their head, a memory. Now, I don't know if it's more the players. I think it's more the fan base. I think players, he could probably throw, I don't know how many footballs he could throw to that spot and probably not hit it every time. Now, I have seen quarterbacks have fun, and, Mike O'Reilly was one of them, who used to play a game with Travis Lulay, and they'd try to hit the upright back when they were both together in BC the first time around. And just things like I've seen quarterbacks try to pick off the upright from like 40 yards out and 30 yards out. So, what are the odds? It's just, what are the odds? I hope we don't see it again, at least not in the near future, because that's kind of a bad break, but it's like a ball hitting the spider cam cable, right? Now, in this case, it's a redo, but because it's not part of the field, right? It's an added feature to covering the game. But as far as, hitting an upright, if that upright is 20 yards deep in the end zone, and it's never a problem. So.
We had a couple questions here, and I want to play voicemail before we go. Bayardo and Gord both, and they had posted, I go, leave voicemails in there. We want to leave it on Twitter. I'm like, we're trying to produce a podcast segment here, but they talk about using the spider cam only for the playoffs. It seemed like, and they call it the in the States here, we call it like the 8K camera as well, right? It's not, it's the really high depth of field, but people look, it's the 8K or it's 4K. It's like, it's not. It's like it's a DSLR or whatever.
DSLR, yeah. So the spider cam, this year, I think it was over when you had the playoffs. I think it was like 16, 17 games. So it's roughly 20%. Now, if we would love to see it on every game, but financially, I don't know if that's going to happen. To have it on once a week would be great, at least. If you watch NFL, and it's very funny because it's very noticeable if you watch an American college game, or if you watch an NFL, like a third level Fox game, I think they call them C games, where they don't have one. And so, like the Buffalo Bills don't get one unless it's a big game. So when you think about, I would love to see one, because as a fan, I think, and I've played Madden, so I get it. And if that's what it takes to get a bigger audience, I think that I would personally support that, but I'm not the guy that pays for it. And so, I know what it brings. It's a game changer. And so to have Spider on more games would be ideal, but it's great that we have it this year. We had it for, 20%, and hopefully going forward, it increases. Now, as far as it's funny that you brought up the depth of field. So I know Fox calls it a megalodon or some fancy name like that. We haven't really come up with a name. It's the same setup. It's a Sony DSLR with a on a Ronin stick and a gimbal, and think we had last weekend in Winnipeg, in Saskatchewan, it was a 50 millimeter lens, and we're debating whether to go, smaller. We want to find a happy medium. And I've watched the CBS and Fox games, and we said, when it first got introduced, we're like, does that work as a live camera cut? Like, is it too jarring to, in your sequence of celebration, go to this camera that suddenly everything is blown out except the guy? And so we wanted to, and we kind of watched a lot of Monday Night Football because they found a happy medium that I personally liked. So when we wanted to start bringing it up here, I said, let's kind of emulate Monday Night Football in the way that they don't fully blow it out. And ESPN is they part own us anyway, but they don't fully blow it out, but they do enough that it's noticeable, but you can still capture it. And from all the input I've gotten, and from the guy that's running it, all the input he's gotten, everybody loves it. The players are all over him. It's hilarious. So.
I will. Yeah, I never interrupt a guest, but I will say it is a little jarring sometimes, and it's one of those. And I know when the NFL did it too, it's like, the focus sliver, it's too thin. It's it's like a 1.2 or something. You're trying to and like it's just even they're still showing replays of like the Super Bowl from last year, and like you see Antonio Brown on the sidelines, and you're like, it's in focus, out focus, in focus, where it's just so it's hard. Like it's a cool, but yeah, I saw a lot of CFL people writing on Twitter about that. And I go, oh, well, that's been part of the NFL for like maybe the last year and a half. And they go, oh, we don't watch the NFL. We don't even know that. I'm like, oh, well, welcome to the world. I mean, like, we don't like it also, or, there's also criticism some way about that. We have, before we let you go, thank you so much for your time. We have one voicemail from Kyle. Kyle has a question about youth sports and kind of directing, whatever. You'll see Kyle's a little bit of a character too. So we'll play this voicemail. It's about 20 seconds and then we'll see what you said.
What's up, guys? What's up, Paul? What's up, Reed? Hope you guys are having a great week. I'm still working on my fade there. I'll make this simple and sweet. Hey, Andy, special guest, I got a question for you. Do you feel like U Sports, the National Championship Vanier Cup, has its place along with the Grey Cup week? And should the CFL include the Vanier Cup with the Grey Cup venue to help alternative football grow, especially at the U Sport level? Let us know.
There you go.
So that's a great question. Now, when I started at TSN covered a lot of U sports. Back then it was called CIAU, and then it went to CIS. The Vanier Cup, and I've gone to Vanier Cups, in here in Toronto. And the thing about the Vanier is it's awesome. Like it's a great game. I went, it was U of S Huskies playing, and it was Brett Schneider playing Western, and it was a great game. I don't even remember the year, but I remember some of the people on it. And then, so I think, and one of the most memorable Vaniers in recent history would have been one that actually Chris Edwards produced when we were in BC for the Grey Cup. And it was when CIS, then it was CIS, U Sports, and the CFL decided to play the Vanier on a Friday night and play the Grey Cup on the Sunday. And it was a great game. It came down to a field goal for the win. It was very memorable. And I thought that would become the norm. And, the way TV rights work here, people bid for them, and they expect that they're going to be able to put more games on for them. And that's how, the product gets sold. So unfortunately, it hasn't had the luster that it did that night. And I would love to see it back on Friday night of the Grey Cup. I think it showcases Canadian talent at its best. I think it's very important to an audience to understand that, because a lot of the Canadian guys, unless you follow U Sports and you're a CFL fan, you don't even know of them until they get drafted. And then you go, hey, like, where'd this guy come from? How come I didn't watch these games? And I don't even know. I mean, we used to have CHCH cover a lot of games here. And then your local cable would cover Mustangs games in London, where I grew up. So it was available. Is it as readily as available as it should be? I don't feel it is, but I think that the Vanier, it should definitely be, in Grey Cup week.
Well, there you go. Well, Andy, I appreciate your time. I know you're busy. It went longer than I anticipated, but I appreciate you hanging out and answering a couple questions as well. And we're excited. I think it's going to be a good swath of games this weekend and the Grey Cup and everything else. So thank you for your time.
Oh, you're very welcome. And I look forward to possibly meeting you in Hamilton.
Well, yeah, we'll see. We'll be there one way or another. I always said we'll be there outside the stadium with a megaphone, but we'll see how it all winds up in the end.
All right. Thanks, Reed.
Well, I am very excited today. We have the whole gang from the Krown Gridiron Nation show on TSN on. We have Jim Mullin, Gord, Randall, and Mike Hogan. And I figured I do a lot of roundtables in my wedding planning podcast, believe it or not, but we never do it in the the Markcast. And so I figured we get all you on, and then Paul won't freak out because we have like 6 interviews this week. We can kind of combine this all into one. So thanks for you all for coming on. We'll just start with Jim. How are you doing today? And then why don't you just say hi?
Well, I'm doing great. I'm disappointed that Paul isn't here. He's gone into hiding. He knows that the Seattle Mariners are building a champion that will absolutely stomp the New York Yankees in future seasons. You see a storm mounting behind me there. We're Gord, out here on the coast. We're waiting for the third of the atmospheric rivers to roll in. We actually had the power knocked out here twice, so this afternoon. So if I drop out all of a sudden, it's because of BC Hydro, nothing else.
Okay. Gord, how are you doing today?
I'm good. I'm in a slightly drier part of town. I think we've already seen the third wave of the atmospheric river, and we're waiting the fourth. Reed, you're down in Seattle, right? Are you seeing much of this? Because we've had like feet of rain in the last week.
A lot of wind right now. A lot of wind. We have this antique lantern that hangs outside of our house. It's been blowing a lot of wind going on here.
Yeah, it's blustery here too. But yeah, otherwise doing good. Yeah, I haven't lost power yet, so hopefully that holds up.
Mike, how high and excited are you right now? Argos getting in to host the East Finals here.
I'm glad to be representing a province where we're still playing football. So we're happy with that. And 38 degrees Celsius, sunny. Got the pool open today. It's great.
Hey, we've got high school football out here. That's going until Saturday.
So many lines, so little time. Not going there.
By the way, for those who don't know, I am representing all the vanquished teams of the Western Conference. I got my Lions hat on. I got my Randy Troutman, who's in the College Football Hall of Fame, by the way.
And you're built
jersey,
like an elk.
And I'm wearing the Edmonton Elks.
The Edmonton Elks, the infamous Edmonton Elks, yes.
There we go.
So we'll do our best to kind of keep this on track today. I think it'll be fun. I think it'll be a little more banter than just having, kind of doing individual interviews and everything else. And obviously we all have our BC Lions hats on representing our America's fallen CFL team. So that'll be good. Jim, first off, thoughts coming out of the weekend, the semifinals. I think the West game was obviously a little more exciting than the East, right, with the double overtime and all of that. Any broad thoughts, now that we're a couple days removed from that?
Well, the West game was fun. The West game was imperfect, and sometimes the CFL is at its very best when it's imperfect, and you're in the middle of close games. I know a lot of people grouse on about a starting quarterback throwing 4 interceptions and getting a win out of it. Big deal. Found a way to win. Found a way to get to the next level, found a way to help the CFL in a week stage 2 games in a final round that they really need, like really core rivalry games. You can't, outside of Edmonton, Calgary, I actually think the two rivalries that really stand up here are Winnipeg, Saskatchewan, and Hamilton, Toronto, and I'm glad we have them in this week. And I hope they can provide Canadians and people all around the world some damn fine entertainment.
Gord, we had you on earlier this year. Lots been talked this year about the games and the quality of the games and the entertainment, kind of all that stuff. What did you make of kind of those 2 matchups, culminating kind of this whole wonky 2021 season?
Well, I think the Eastern final, I'm not overly surprised in that Montreal had been kind of volatile all season and susceptible to laying a bit of an egg every so often. So you knew that there was always kind of that possibility that they flopped. And unfortunately it came on the biggest stage. But, I agree with Jim. The level of chaos in that Saskatchewan Winnipeg game was ideal. Like it made it a lot of fun. And I mean, as you know, we spend most of our time covering the college ranks, and that's in a lot of cases what makes the college ranks so fun is that imperfection, that level of chaos. And so that was outstanding. And you know, kudos to Cody Fajardo. Like Jim was saying, like he found a way to contribute to his team and to give them what they needed to get over the top. And whether it was with his legs this week or, you know, he's been more effective with his arm in the past, I thought that bodes well. And frankly, Calgary didn't play any better than they did. So there's not really a lot to grouse about, as Jim put it.
Mike, you know, with the Argos sitting there, right, waiting in the wings, you know, Hamilton, the ones coming in, is that, in terms of rivalries, Jim touched on that too, best case scenarios, right, for really selling this East Finals?
What I've hoped for, from not necessarily from an on-field perspective, but from an off-field perspective, I've been dying for this, to get a run, actually, where we can get Hamilton and Toronto playing in the Eastern Final for, you know, 2 or 3 years in a row, where both teams are good. And it stokes the rivalry even more. You know, we've got a lot of folks coming down the QEW from Hamilton for the Eastern Final, and we're pumped about that. I think it's going to be just a spectacular atmosphere, and maybe that's what it needs to kind of get more people involved who are sort of that perimeter fan that doesn't come down a lot. We're hoping we get them in the building on Sunday. They cheer like hell for the Argos, and we put on a show for them. That's ideal, and they keep coming back. We know the Ticat fans have a very large, very loyal fan base. We're trying to get there. And the way that we do that, as Pinball Clemens says, we do that by being boring. And by being boring, he means we do the right thing all the time, on the field and off. And so people come to expect that. So I think we took a lot of steps this year to become a boring team, as it were, and we're starting to see the benefits of that.
Jim, what do you make of the Argos? I think we talked last with you kind of preseason, right? Schedule, I think, breakdowns, whatever. What do you make of just this run that they've gone on?
You know, they brought some fantastic athletes in at the start of the season and through free agency. And I think Ryan Dinwiddie, as a head coach, has been a work in progress, quite frankly. We've seen some ups and downs with him. I hope that doesn't catch up with him, his level of inexperience as a head coach. In a game that's as pressure-packed as an Eastern Final. McLeod Bethel Thompson has been a bit of a roller coaster ride as well, but there's been some shining spots. I like DJ Foster. I love Curly Gittens Jr. Got to say his name a number of times in our old college show for a number of years. Canadian receiver that brings a lot. You know, in terms of entertainment, it's been uneven. But then again, the entire league's been uneven. I think the X factor going into this game, believe it or not, comes down to the toe of Boris Beatty. He's got the longest range in this league. He's certainly looked like the strongest place kicker. And in a game that you're playing in December, usually late November, it can come down to a toe. And, you know, that's why I kind of give the Argos the edge in this game, because he might be the X factor.
Gord, do you view Hamilton moving on? A lot of giveaways, right, from Trevor Harris, right? The Alouettes seem to kind of fall apart a little bit. Do you give it more? Who did you give the edge to in that game kind of coming out? Was it more the Alouettes giving it away, or was it Hamilton really rising up?
Well, I don't think it's justified to take all the credit away from Hamilton. You know, they played a clean game. They took care of business, did what they needed to do, right? And you know, Hamilton has had to adjust a little bit this year. You know, Brandon Banks has not been the game-breaking talent that he was for many seasons past that they were kind of relying on. They've leaned more heavily on the run game. They've cycled through multiple quarterbacks again this year, and you know, they've managed to find a way to weather it all and come out as one of the, I would say, to be honest with you, from beginning to end this season, probably the most consistent team in the Eastern Conference. Ultimately, they didn't get that top seed. The Argonauts did, but I think the highs and lows were definitely a lot more volatile for the Toronto Argonauts than they were for the Hamilton Tiger Cats this year. And so, you know, full credit to this team. This qualifies as a dynasty in the CFL. You know, this is a team that has, you know, they haven't yet, you know, put together those multiple championships, but this is as consistent a team since Orlando Steinauer has been in charge there as there's been in the CFL. And so, you know, you can't count them out. That, you know, Orlando Steinauer is a fantastic coach. You know, I'm seeing his name tossed around and bandied about for, you know, jobs down in the States again, because he's done such a fantastic job, especially in your neck of the woods, Reed. I heard him tossed out with the University of Washington, DC job the other day, but This is a fantastic coach. He's going to have his guys ready to go. I'm looking forward to seeing what they put out there and that added juice of having, the stadium packed. And I think that that's the biggest positive coming out of these matchups. Jim kind of alluded to it a little bit, but we're going to 2 venues that are going to be juiced for this, that are going to be packed. It was disappointing to see some empty seats in Saskatchewan this past week, but that's not going to be happening in Winnipeg this week, as it sounds like they're already sold out. And Mike, you'll know better than I will, but I believe the BMO is already sold out too. So, that's going to be first and foremost what the CFL needs here is bums and seats, creating that atmosphere that you want in a conference championship.
Yeah, Mike, them opening up some of the upper stands, right? I mean, we were talking before we got going here, all I see right now is Argos on social media promoting the living hell out of this game in a good way, right? I see a lot of things that I think other teams could be doing, right? And so what do you attribute that all to right now?
I do want to correct Gord on one thing. You can't be a dynasty when you haven't won a championship in a year that starts with a 2. So the Ticats are not a dynasty. I'm going to underscore that. No, I mean, yeah, we, people complain about our marketing. I think we have the best social media team in sports, period, full stop, underscore. We're certainly as good as anybody else. And, we're getting out there. We're getting the message. If you talk to people who sit in the stands, I'm up top, but I have heard countless times this year that our demo is getting younger, that we've got more young people coming in. And this wasn't going to be MLSE just bought the team. Boop, there goes the light switch. Now we're going to fill up the building. We have the lower bowl and upper west bowl sold out. We're now selling tickets in the upper east bowl for the deck for the first time since 2017 East Finals. So yeah, we got a few days left to try and to sell it out. We're hoping to get there, and hopefully we will. So it's changing. We're trying to be boring. We're trying to do the right things, and as Pinball says, and it's going to reflect. And I think when you see the atmosphere and some of the casual fans see what's going on Sunday, should they pop over from the NFL if they're NFL fans first to see what's going on in the Canadian game, I think they're going to like what they see on screen.
Jim, a lot was made of attendance last weekend, right? A lot. I mean, even friend of the show, Rob Van Stone, Rob Peterson talking about too much made about that, not enough, just the right amount made of the attendance issues.
I think maybe a little too much in Saskatchewan. I mean, they've only had one playoff sellout in New Mosaic. It had been a long time since they had a playoff sellout in Old Mosaic. I don't know why there's a trend in Saskatchewan when the playoffs kick in, especially if it's a semifinal, because it's so hard to within that week turn your staff around and sell all those tickets from a standing start for 7 days. It's always the Western final or the Eastern final. It has that 2-week buildup that can create that outcome, right? Some teams do choose to include the potential of a playoff ticket in a season ticket package. I don't think they do that in Saskatchewan. Someone can correct me if I'm wrong. So, slightly disappointing. Hamilton, there's a bit of a draw in that market right now in that they're trying to sell Grey Cup tickets, right? I believe that they have about 2,500 of those left, and they aren't cheap. So if you're going to challenge somebody in Hamilton to make a choice between game A or game B, and you've got the big game or potentially the big game sitting in Hamilton waiting for you, you're either going to hold your money back and wait for that big game to see if your team's in there, or you've already spent your money on it and you're going to make a choice to stay at home and watch it on TV. So as much as I've been critical from time to time about attendance in some of these places across the CFL, I think in the case of the semifinals, it's okay. Everybody can settle down a little bit.
I was surprised that we got our Grey Cup tickets on the pre-sale, but then it does seem like they've shot up quite a bit. I mean, I know it's Canadian, but I'm like, oh wow, I mean that's quite it's like $3.99, right, for some of the tickets. It seems is that hefty because they don't have the right? They normally have another additional bleacher, right? Is that what I've been told?
Over the last 15 years, there's been a big arc in Grey Cup ticket prices. So. What you're paying right now isn't that much out of the ordinary from the last couple of seasons.
Gord, what did you think? Speaking of Saskatchewan, Cody Fajardo, so much has been made this year, right? Cody's been critical of himself, critical of the teammates, social media, all these kind of things. Felt to me like he finally, after throwing all the picks and stuff, was just like, F it, I'm running this. I'm going for it. I'm taking this. What did you think of his performance? Really felt like willing this team to victory.
I think, I think all the way back to week 1 when they opened the season, and a little bit of insight that I think it was Glenn Suter on that particular broadcast gave us to Jason Moss's playbook on the offensive side of the ball for them, and just how complex it is, and how he and Fajardo kind of work together each week. Moss basically throws everything at Fajardo. They work it out in practice, and then they pick the things that they think are going to work on a weekly basis. And one of the problems with that is that you risk being overwhelmed and never quite perfecting everything. And so, not to take anything from Jason Moss, I think he's an outstanding coordinator in this league, and all those ideas. I mean, there's some fantastic stuff out there, but I do think that every so often, when you're throwing new stuff out there each week, you're running based on feel. That can sometimes backfire on you if the other team seems to have the answers, and Calgary seemed to have some answers, or Fajardo wasn't quite hitting things, or maybe he just wasn't quite feeling things on game day the way he had been in practice. But I mean, it's a nice luxury to have, right? When you're a quarterback and you're struggling to throw the ball downfield, to be able to see seams and make up some hay and help yourself out with your legs. And when you get into the cold season, it's not the worst thing to be able to have that ground element in your back pocket if you absolutely need to. There's a more than fair chance that we're going to see snow either this week in Winnipeg, or if they get that far, a couple weeks from now in Hamilton. And so, that's always an added element that makes the ground game that much more important. And they've got running backs to help out with that too. So I do think I think if they were to go back to the drawing board this week, they're probably going to want to lean on the running game a little bit more than they did this past week. And that's always a difficult call for Canadian football teams to make because of the 3-down game. Coaches want to throw the ball even more so than you see in the States. But I do think that that's something that they'll want to kind of recommit to this week, because I'll tell you what, the team on the other side will commit to the run. You don't have to worry about that.
Hey, Winnipeg weather, Reed, before you go, I did look it up just before we came on for Sunday. -9 Celsius at kickoff. It'll drop to about -11 or -12. Snow showers throughout that. By the way, for you American folks, that's 17 dropping down to 14 throughout the game. So when you ask about spring football in Canada, just about the same weather at the start of a spring football season, if it were to ever happen up here.
36 degrees and sunny on Sunday in Toronto.
There you go.
I'm kidding. I think we're +3. So it's not supposed to be a bad day for the first week of December. So the gods are smiling on us.
No fog there.
No fog. It's not going to be a 2-part game. No, I think we're safe on that one.
I do want the 2-game total point series to come back, though, because people look it up. The 1986 Eastern Final is the greatest comeback of all time, and it's between Hamilton and Toronto.
Here they go, Reed. They're going to make us feel young again.
Yeah.
No, go back and watch this, man. A 26-point comeback with 3 quarters left.
Jim, tell us about how great Bob Bailey was
in the second quarter of the game.
Dude just picked Joe Kroll as one of his great players. So,
well, speak up. I can't hear you. Anyway,
tell us about the greatness of Bob Bailey and how they used to use nail guns to keep grip on the ice.
Mike, I want to talk. Speaking of Cody, all these kind of things. I don't think we've had you on since McLeod was kind of anointed, right, the face of the Argos and all of that. We've obviously talked with a lot of other Argonauts, people about that. Thoughts on him, really becoming the face of this franchise, going in and a lot of the marketing, and then on the field, really kind of taking the Argos by the helm?
Mac's awesome. I didn't get to know Nick all that well, but there's not a guy in that room doesn't love McLeod Bethel Thompson. His leadership skills are vastly underrated, and I think he's the most interesting guy in the CFL. His post-game or post-practice news conferences are legendary. So he's got that it factor, and he just continues to get better. And he's embraced the system. He's got a strong arm. a very strong arm, and he's got now the guys around him. And it was nice to go to practice and look at the receiving core being completely healthy for the first time. It basically got everybody back from the beginning of the season, and it looks like a healthy group. And he's just got those intangibles. He's found so many ways to come back. Even against Hamilton this year in the Thanksgiving Day, he threw for over 300 yards in the second half to come back. So he's just got that intangible. When he gets on a roll, he's really, really good. So I would think that what Hamilton wants to do is not let him get on that roll, because if he does, some good things are going to happen to the guys in double blue. But he and Arbuckle, it was an open competition, and he beat Nick out to the extent where Nick was dealt. So that's on MPT. It was a very, very even competition, I think, coming out of camp. There were a couple of changes made where Mac started, and then Nick took over, and then Mac, and then Nick, and then it was Mac, and he's been our guy for the last couple of months. So he's a better quarterback than I think a lot of people, even in this market, give him credit for.
Jim, with the Jeremiah Mazzoli, right? Came out, got injured, right? Coming back now, didn't play phenomenally, right? Last weekend. I mean, what do you make of this matchup with Hamilton going in?
Well, I think I counted up the number of starts that Jeremiah Mazzoli had over about 2.5 years. It's only 16 games. I mean, the ability to put him in and stay with him. I was on another podcast saying, why wasn't he yanked for Evans in this situation? And that it's like the guy needs reps to get back up to speed and feel that offense and get his timing down. I think in large part that's what he was doing against Toronto last time, trying to connect on some long passes. I have some confidence in him if he does things early. I mean, he needs to do things that are going to give him confidence early in that game. If not, if this thing starts going sideways, it could get ugly in a hurry for the Hamilton Tiger Cats in that position.
Gord, what do you make of the other side with Saskatchewan, kind of barely getting by, right? The double overtime, all this flukiness going into Winnipeg, right? I mean, yes, it was like a huge win and all of this, right? Very exciting, but it wasn't like they dominated going in, right? We have Winnipeg here waiting. What do you make of that?
Well, I love this Winnipeg squad. I mean, they won last season and are looking to have the weirdest back-to-back Grey Cup championship teams in league history. But one of the things that I love about this Final Four, there's a couple things that I love about it. Number one, we talked about kind of the marketing aspect of it, and Jim was just talking about Jeremiah Mazzoli. That's great for those American viewers that turn in, because you get a great, oh hey, remember that guy? And then you get guys like Shane Ray, Sean Open on the other side. In the Western Conference, the other thing that I love about it that applies to both conferences is all four teams left are probably the four best offensive lines in the league. And Montreal is probably next, so no disrespect to them. But I love, that's my position group. I love seeing great units on that side of the ball. And these are teams that have had excellent offensive line units going on for years, it seems. And so for Winnipeg, I think what I'm most interested to see is how their run game shakes out, because that's been on offense. That's been the core of their offensive attack. Even without Andrew Harris for the last little while, Brady Oliveira's filled in well, another Canadian running back, and even Johnny Augustine, their third string running back, filled in last week with a really solid, or 2 weeks ago with a really solid performance. So I'm interested to see what they're able to do in the run game. But where they really stand out for me, that's the best defensive unit in the CFL, in my opinion. And for Saskatchewan, they're going to have to be able to hold off that pass rush. Willie Jefferson and Jackson Jeffcoat excelling as always. Adam Bighill and the linebacking core behind him are at the top of their game. So that's an interesting matchup for me. And one guy I would love to see what he can bring to this game, because it feels like he's still getting his feet wet a little bit, is Duke Williams for the Rough Riders. That to me could potentially be an X factor, because this is a guy that I don't think that anybody's forgotten, but he was a star in this league before he went down to the States. And so if he's starting to get warmed up, that could potentially be kind of a hidden weapon X factor for the Rough Riders on the road here.
Reed, I just want to bring up one point about the running backs of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers and why I love them so much is that they come from three distinct development paths for Canadian players. You've got Andrew Harris that came out of junior football, never played university or college football. Brady Oliveira, who went to North Dakota, went down there, saw him play. Fantastic guy at the college level, at that FCS level. And Johnny Augustine was a standout at the U Sports level in Canada. So you've got all of these different paths that take Canadian players into a position, that's a skilled position that they can star at. That's one of the reasons why I find that backfield in Winnipeg so compelling.
Well, and don't forget Sean Thomas Erlington in Hamilton, who should be a factor there, the former University of Montreal stud. So if I'm a Canadian personnel guy, start drafting Canadian running backs, guys.
And then I saw, Blue Bombers had posted, I think today, that Andrew Harris, kind of teasing that he's going to be back in the lineup. I mean, how big of a deal is that, him coming in?
I think he'll be on a pretty hard pitch count if he does come back in. Now, you never know. Like he's a very strong-willed guy. He's the type of guy that would probably insist on carrying the load. But as we've seen, they have competent to better than competent backup running backs in the room. So I think if you do see him, I'm expecting it'll probably be in a part-time role, get his feet wet, and assuming they make it through, be able to lean on him a bit more in a couple weeks' time if that's what they want to do. But he may or may not still play at this point in time. I would be surprised now that he's practiced if he doesn't at least suit up, but I would expect him to be on a pretty hard pitch count.
But yeah, and he's a physical guy. Though. Gordy, you nailed it when you were talking about the backups, because right now with the way the rules set up, when you've got a guy like Harris and you want to designate that position as a Canadian spot, you need that guy behind him. And they've proven this year that they got not one but two guys behind him. Oliveira's flashed. He looked really good early. And then, Augustine, we saw we could do it well and kind of thought, boy, if he gets a shot at the next level. And there have been a couple of games this year where he got the shot and looked fantastic, including their last time out. So, yeah, that's one of Winnipeg. And they've got several strengths, but because they've got a feature back in Harris and they want to run the football behind that really good offensive line, the fact that they have depth of Canadian talent at that position bodes well. And it just shows the need for teams to find that backup who can step in if they want to go Canadian. You don't need one, you need two. And if teams are willing to commit, there's jobs aplenty for Canadians in this league.
Jim, you had a comment?
Oh, no, I was just going to say the comparison between the three backs as well. I mean, when you look at Harris, he's kind of a bruising style, even for his size. Oliveira is surprisingly physical for his size. Even though he can slash a bit, he can survive impact. Augustine is more about speed, making the burst, being elusive. So within that staff of three, they can throw you some change-ups.
When Augustine was at Guelph, he looked really good early, and then he bulked up, and maybe bulked up a little bit too much, and it took away from some of that speed and elusiveness. So he lost some weight and became a better back. I think some guys just have that pressure that, I got to go pro, I got to be bigger. That wasn't necessarily the case with him, and he's looked really good.
Well, and that's part of the changing math for Canadian running backs too, right? I'm sure part of the thinking and bulking up was, most Canadian running backs, when they go to the league, become H-backs, right? I mean, and fortunately that's changing, because I remember a generation ago, a decade ago, a guy like Jamal Lee comes out of the college ranks having ripped up U Sports and ends up having to become an H-back and a bit player in the pros. And so hopefully that stereotype's changing, just as hopefully a few years down the road from now, the stereotype about Canadian quarterbacks continues to move in the right direction.
But the positional thing as well, Hamilton's got caught on this a couple of times historically. When they had Jesse Lumsden, if they wanted to take him out, they'd bring in an American back, and they had to switch an American offensive lineman. So Lumsden would come in with an American offensive lineman, and the American back and the Canadian offensive lineman would go off the field as a tandem. And right now with Erlington and now Don Jackson, that kind of messes around with what they want to do in terms of the ratio, because they don't have that guy who can be at the same level as Sean Thomas Erlington right now. So that's a little bit problematic in terms of juggling the ratio, and has caused Hamilton to try some different things, including the taking advantage of the rule about having a Canadian replaced by a veteran American.
Well, but as we've seen covering our college show, there's the ability to create that depth if your player personnel department goes after it. And I don't think enough has been said when it comes to the Winnipeg Blue Bombers about their player personnel department, about Danny McManus, about Ted Gavaya, about some of the other individuals that have been involved in that department going out into those free agent camps, going to the NFL camps, and, they lose a receiver, they find another one. They build up Canadian talent at key locations on the roster. They have been the most nimble group, I think, out of any front office in the CFL when it comes to unearthing that talent and finding replacement talent on the fly too. I think that they seriously do not get enough credit.
And that job's more difficult than it's ever been, right? Like the NFL rosters are larger than they've ever been. If you're looking specifically at national talent, more Canadians are going south of the line earlier on in their careers and have more eyeballs on them from the States. That there's more startup leagues giving you competition on that side of the line too. They're having to dig really deep to find some of these talents and unearth these gems that maybe would have been easier in a generation past. And that's not just for Winnipeg. That's the entire league. That player personnel job, finding these underrated talents that can transition up here, I think has never been more difficult.
And I know for Vince Magri and John Murphy and Alex Russell on our club, it's been frustrating not being able to go down and see the NFL live. Go down to camps and to the training camp and to practices and to talk firsthand with the guys, and make sure that your face is seen down there. I know it's been frustrating because it's an easier way to go and look at a guy live and get some of those intangibles and to be able to see how they practice with their teammates and just little minor things like that can go a long way. So it's made a tough job even tougher not having access to not only the pro camps in the NFL, but the NCAA camps as well.
Man, what makes my life tough? My cat having access to my room when I'm doing one of these things. I apologize for that.
I don't want to go on. We could go on obviously forever about all this, but to be respectful of everyone's time and everything else. Before we go, I want to get kind of major storyline going into the weekend. I feel like, except for the whole Saskatchewan thing, I really don't want to get into that, right, with the Purfoy and all that. There hasn't been like the most juice, right, kind of going. I mean, I know these rivalries are established and all that. I've seen a lot of people posting online funny memes and stuff, but in terms of like the actual camps and the teams, not a lot of, you know what I mean? Like rivalry kind of stuff going on. So what is kind of the one major storyline that we should be tracking kind of going in? You could pick either game going into the weekend. We'll start with Mike.
I think the obvious storyline, and it's a unique one in this league. This is the 5th time we've played Hamilton. So for coaching staffs, what do you show that's new? What concepts are you going to show that the other team hasn't seen a million times already? So I think that's the challenge for both teams. And, when it comes down to it, Hamilton's a big play team and they seem to win the games where they have the most big plays. So I think if we as an Argonaut organization can have our guys create more big plays, whether by turnover, and I don't even mean scoring plays. I can mean a turnover or a big sack or just those big plays, some momentum shifts, a big punt return. If we can have more big plays than a big play team, I really like our chances.
Gord, what about you?
I think in the Western game, my big storyline on the field, what I'm looking at is how that Saskatchewan offense is able to carve out points against the Winnipeg defense. I think that Winnipeg defense is exceptional, probably the best in the league. And we talked about Cody Fajardo's struggles last week. If you're Saskatchewan, what kind of balance are you going to try and approach this game with? What's Jason Moss got up his sleeve? I think this will be the 3rd, maybe 4th time that these teams have played this year too. So it's not a whole lot different. What do you show that's different? I think he's got the depth of playbook to be able to do it, but can he get Fajardo ready to go and to be able to execute that at a high enough level? Or do you start putting some wrinkles in, try to establish the ground game more? How do you carve out those points? And I think the other storyline that I always keep an eye on when Mike O'Shea's in a big game is, does he overwhelm his love, his undying love of special teams play. It was a running joke for a while that Mike O'Shea loves kicking more than any other coach in the game. And I think in recent years, he's evolved beyond that. I'm always keeping an eye out for whether he lets that get away from him as the former special teamer and special teams coordinator he is.
Jim, what about you?
Let's see, two things. More editorial. Has the clock finally struck midnight on a group of talented yet aging Hamilton Tiger Cats? This is a team that's always been ranked at the top of the list for the last couple of seasons, has never broken through for one reason or another. At times they have shown their age this year in a very odd year. Is this their moment where they finally move forward into a Grey Cup and finish the deal, or is this time to move on? And for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, is this the game where they find a way to win and take that step to actually becoming somewhere along the line of dynasty? Is this a team that can win 3 Grey Cups? Certainly they've got the horses right now. There's a lot more change in the CFL than back in the old days with the Edmonton Eskimos putting 5 Grey Cups together. 1-year contracts have seen to that. Rival leagues have seen to that. But is this Winnipeg team something of a dynasty that we're seeing form before our eyes? We've seen some very strong teams in Western finals find ways to lose after being rusty for a couple of weeks. So that's my question. Are the Bombers off to a dynasty, or are they like that 16-1-1 Edmonton team those many years ago? I think it was 89 that found a way to lose to the Saskatchewan Roughriders.
Before we go, get your game picks. Gord, who do you have in both?
I got Winnipeg in the West, and I will get chewed out next week when we're shooting our episode if I don't pick the Argos in the East.
Mike, what about you? Argos, and are you picking?
He can't pick the other game. He's not allowed to pick the other.
No, I'm just going to sit back and enjoy it. And should we be fortunate enough to beat Hamilton in the first game of the afternoon, I'm hoping for the most physical, draining football game in the history of the CFL in the second game.
That's good. And Jim, take us home.
Well, one of the things I really like to do behind the scenes of our show is annoy Mike as much as possible. So I've got Winnipeg coming over from the West and Oski Wawa, Holy Mackinac, the Tigers going to eat double blue raw.
I'm sorry about the size of your Oski. Sorry about that.
It's wee.
This has been a lot of fun, you all. I appreciate you all making the time and coordinating schedules to have everyone busy come on and do this. I really appreciate it.
Argonauts.ca for tickets. Argonauts.ca. We want to see you at the Eastern Final.
It's good.
Are you paying for my airfare?
No. but you can sleep in the backyard.
Okay. There we go. Thanks, guys.
Welcome back. Want to thank all of our guests. Bob Irving, shout outs to you. What a great career. Congratulations. Happy trails, and the best of luck in retirement.
Yeah, Andy Bouyoukos, great interview. And then the panel. I thought the panel was lively. It didn't get too out of control. I got a little worried at the beginning when we were talking, but it was good. It was good. One note, I emailed Roy Johnson about this with the USFL stuff. I still am amazed that they haven't announced the Birmingham aspect of it, right? We know the teams, we know kind of whatever. I emailed Roy. He goes, he doesn't know what the deal is. He goes, it's really slow moving. He doesn't know why they haven't gotten that far yet. But I had that question in my mind today about that. So I took the liberty to do that. So,
on that note, similarly related,
this was big.
Wow. The Krown Plaza in, I guess, Indianapolis. Yeah, Lucas Oil Stadium. And the CIB, which I assume is the Indianapolis Business Association, whatever, Commerce. I don't know. They sued the Spring League for nearly $1.4 million of unpaid bills.
Yep.
Okay. I'm not here to receipts, but I have to bring in my receipts. I've had concerns. And I like Brian Woods. I think Brian's a great guy. I think he's passionate about the product. I don't think he's malicious. I hope that. But I had concerns when they announced they were going to do the USFL. Brian was in charge of it, and Brian was going to own it. I had concerns then, and I kept saying that I've said that once a week about the food thing, about how they treated the players, blah, 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 how, the players had to pay to play.
We didn't get our merchandise.
The outstanding costs on merch. There's a lot of things that made me go, God, what the hell's going on over there? So this only helps. This only hurts the idea that you want people to believe in this product. You want people to believe that this USFL thing is going to work this time. But even though this isn't the USFL that's being sued, it is the CEO of your new league being sued for his old venture. It's not a good look. It's from an optic standpoint, this looks horrible. And this is probably why the reason Fox had to come in and go, well, let's just own it. And Brian, you can run it, and then we're good. Like, there's no questions.
I agree. I got a lot of. Well, first off, this just went crazy. I mean, I had this sent to me, and it went crazy. I will say, I thought it was. So Mark had Mickey on this week. A great interview. Mickey Shuey is the one that wrote the article about this. Like I said at the top of the show, in case you missed that, we're going to do a follow with Mickey this week. He's talking with Brian, and he's got basically like part 2 of this, right? It's this like ongoing saga coming out. This went crazy. I got a lot of pushback. This doesn't have anything to do with the CFL or the USFL. I say the exact same thing Paul does. The same questions we have with like Russ Brandon coming into the XFL, right? With maybe his checkered past. Similarly here, especially when it's a CEO of a new football venture dealing with like legal issues and not paying bills from a previous football venture. Like, this is like apples to apples, across the board. Interesting thing about this. You have a point?
That just kind of like dawned on me, like maybe the suit was coming and they knew it was coming. That's why Fox took over. Like, it wasn't just like a situation where Fox is like, let us run this. Then they must have known this was coming.
Well, it's weird. So, because they've gone back and forth. I mean, obviously this was back in May. And so they said, according to the suit, Brian Woods told the hotel's GM in mid-August he expected the outstanding balance to be paid by the end of the month. He followed up with a phone call. It said individuals with an email outlining the plan for payment. The Spring League planned on, this is a quote, closing a significant capital raise in the next 2 to 3 weeks. Accordingly, we will be using these proceeds to pay the Krown Plaza on or before October 15th for the balance. That to me is like Fox money, right? And that's why I just can't figure out like, if obviously this is moving forward, right? I mean, the USL is kicking off. Why this wasn't paid for? You know what I mean? Like if Brian got, if we got the money and we transferred over, why this wasn't taken care of?
I don't want to think the worst of Brian. He's not handling some things very well. That's all I'll say. And if it's malicious, then that changes my whole opinion about him. And I will own that. But he seemed pretty straightforward, other than never giving you the helmet from the Spring League. He seemed pretty straightforward with us every time we've dealt with him, and this is concerning, and it just adds weight to my concerns that I've voiced for weeks now.
Yeah, and people ask me, like, I didn't bother reaching out to Brian. I just figured once legal stuff is brought up, once lawsuits are brought up, right? Same thing with dealing with the Lucas Oil Stadium. People, they're not going to talk, right? They're in the middle of an ongoing lawsuit, right? You're going to reach out. I'm glad that Mickey is reaching out and kind of got that going. So at least we will have a little bit of contact with him at that point. I just figure like he's not going to talk to us about this right now, right? I mean, let's be honest.
Yep. On that note, USFL trademarks have been added, including the Blitz and new team logos. Interesting.
Yeah, I'm gonna put this photo up. You see kind of the four, like a hand bolt. Mark put together this graphic, but we've got like the hand bolt and the man wearing the mask, which isn't on there.
Wait. Are these like, is this hand and the bolt, is that like a real one that was back in the day?
Well, so I have a thing down here too that we'll get to that with these logos. These are just new. Basically, they're cleaning up like now all the old USFL merch that was like the old logos are now like replaced with the ones that they own the trademarks to. And we can actually put this up right now. You see down below here how they've changed. I think this is just interesting that sportslogo.net put this together. You can see like the original logos back in the day and then how they've updated them.
Oh yeah. Well, oh yeah, you're down there.
Yeah, I skipped ahead there. But you see, so like it's one of those things like we're kind of reimagining things, and then like we own these now.
Right. I could see how they get around the ownership issue. I'm sorry, this graphic about these weird dude, these logos look like they were done by my flipping niece, man. Some of these are not good. I'm sorry. It's just distracting to me.
Well, it's good. I think part of that too is just for trademarking. I mean, they can go in and like glitz and glamour those up. I mean, those are like, it's like when you file a patent, right? And they draw the iPhone out and they're like, this is what the iPhone's going to look like. And then, it's just to get the patent. The USFL had a Black Friday deal. I said that was my hypothesis, was that they had $60 shirts so that they could actually discount them for Black Friday. I thought that was pretty funny.
The cost they should be charging, like, which is what, $40?
Yeah. Should be. This is interesting. Just USFL news. We're almost out of here. They put together a list of, you see the most popular teams right now. I just think it's interesting to kind of engage where people's interests are. Pittsburgh is number 1, Michigan, Philadelphia, Houston, New Orleans, Birmingham, Tampa, New Jersey, in that order. New Jersey only has about 2,500 followers on Twitter. Pittsburgh has 7,100. So you kind of see the range there. I think it's good interaction so far for teams that don't exist.
I think, you think that, yeah.
Yeah. Any surprises?
No, not really. I think that Jersey thing is adequate. I think that previous owner of the Jersey Generals kind of,
I wouldn't have called it the New Jersey Generals.
I would have gotten completely away from that name and that location.
Yeah.
I would have completely not chosen that. There were so many other options they could have pulled besides New Jersey. And this isn't political. This just like,
yeah. I would have gotten away. From a
realistic standpoint, like that name is a little bit toxic these days, so I wouldn't have touched it.
No, got away from that. This is interesting. So this came out, the Iron Bowl, which was the Alabama Auburn, massive ratings up 55%. But if you look here, they had 17 million. CBS Sports reported it was the second most watched regular season game since 2019. The peak audience is 17.3 million, including an average of 10 million, which was at 55%. Birmingham proved to be the top market with an eye-popping 53.7 rating and 76 share of all households that were actively watching. Birmingham loves football.
They do. And that's why that stuff is going to work down there. Like Birmingham loves their football. I mean, we can't swing a dead cat in Birmingham without hearing someone say "Roll Tide." And I like on that note, like I don't think there's much to be like they're saying, "Oh, it was down last year." No one was watching these sports last year because no one felt like they mattered. Still, they're like, "Oh, we didn't play full season, so does this championship really matter?" So no one really watched. And to be honest with you, that Birmingham 76 share is not the most impressive share I've seen in my life.
Well, truth. Seattle used to be when the Seahawks played. Seattle would have like a 90% share.
Our share, when we worked at our station in Seattle, our share for that day was 98.7%.
That means like the number of TVs for people. That means like 76%, 76 share, right? That's like of 100 TVs, 76 out of 100 that were watching the game or whatever it was.
And it's like, it's great when you get that. Like if you get like 10, you're doing really good. But 76 and then 98.7 that we got when we were at Seattle, like those are good numbers.
Yeah, when Seattle went to the Super Bowl, right? It was like the division game.
Won the Super Bowl when they won the Super Bowl.
Yeah, but it was like the local game, like the Seattle game. It wasn't the Super Bowl. It was like the
no, it was the Super Bowl that they got a 98.7.
Okay.
It was a Super Bowl. So
a couple quick notes. I just want to get your thoughts on this. We'll get out of here. Thoughts on Cam Newton getting benched for PJ Walker?
Good.
Like, why did we waste $10 million on Cam Newton?
Why did we get all in love with Cam Newton right all of a sudden just because he had one good game?
But he didn't even have a good game.
Team to win. PJ led that team to win that day. But Cam got all the headlines. Very disrespectful to PJ Walker.
Very disrespectful. So Sheena posted some stuff. Sheena Quick, longtime listeners will know Sheena. She's our beat reporter in Carolina. She had a quote from Coach Rule, because she goes, why'd you put PJ in the end, whatever? He goes, well, because we weren't protecting the quarterback.
Oh, so it's cool to get PJ.
Yeah. That's what I said.
Dude, why is this guy coaching?
Yeah, that's what I said. I go, okay, so let's put PJ in because you're not protecting the quarterback? That's crazy.
It's not protecting the quarterback. Like, Like maybe they're not protecting Cam Newton because they don't like Cam Newton.
Well, also their O-line sucks, so that's not an excuse to make like PJ get hurt.
Yeah, it's just stupid.
I'm over Coach. I'm very over.
Look, why is Matt Rule a head coach of the NFL?
Because he rebuilt Temple, right? Wasn't that the one that he rebuilt?
And?
But I mean, that's why, right? I mean,
how many coaches from the college game have come to the NFL and won a Super Bowl? I think two.
Urban wants to be 3.
Oh, Urban ain't winning the NFL.
No, he's not winning.
He's not winning the NFL. It's too lap dances.
You see my my Heinicke hat. Thrilling game Monday night. Heinicke beat Russell Wilson. We have now Heinicke and the Washington football team, a former spring league football quarterback, beat Tom Brady, beat Cam Newton, and now has beat Russell Wilson. And do you think they can beat Derek Carr?
I think they can.
Yeah. Do you think Washington is 500 by the next time we talk?
Yes, I think they are, but they're not winning that division.
Well, Cowboys. I was really hoping for a Cowboys loss tonight.
Cowboys.
It was interesting that. So I finally got a tweet back from he who we will not be named because my one tweet about Taylor went really viral about him winning and all that kind of stuff. And it was still the same twice failed league stuff. And I was like, hey, we're going to be in Hamilton. Is Sportsnet paying for your per diem, or do you want to come stay with us at Airbnb? I thought that was pretty funny.
A good clap back. It's just like, dude, we're trying to be cool, and you're just like, twice failed league. Like it's so unoriginal. Arash, get new material, man.
Also, 3 down today in covering the XFL stuff. They called it the twice revived league, which I thought was a very interesting change of tone.
Thank you. 3 Homer Nation. I'm happy that they did that for us.
Any thoughts on Bob Stoop going back to? I mean, you follow the college stuff going back to the Sooners?
Stopgap situation. He's like going to go and he's just going to do one game and he's done. It's just weird that he's doing the game. That must mean that like Riley's taking his entire staff to USC.
But like in the middle of the season.
Well, it's not really the middle. Well, yeah, it is the middle of the season. Holy shit.
Last note, the European League of Football is adopting the XFL kickoff rules for 2022.
Dude, those kickoff rules are great. I think those kickoff rules are great. Emphasize safety. I liked them. People weren't getting their heads taken off, although that stuff was kind of fun too to watch. But
anyway, there you go. Late night show. We got everything in. I appreciate you sticking with us.
Yeah, I appreciate Reed having everything ready to go right when I got home, plugged in, ready, and we went with it. So with that being said, I want to thank you all for listening. Hopefully this week we get some good results. Argos advancing to the Grey Cup, I hope. Probably playing Winnipeg, let's be honest. And Grey Cup coming up just around the corner. So check us out. We doing a lot of stuff leading up to that. And we'll see you here next week.
Yeah, look for the bonus episode. Look for the bonus episode Thursday. And then we are going to figure out the time that works now that if no one else, or if not us, but everyone else will have media credentials. So they'll kind of know what they have to cover and not. And then I'm thinking Saturday is probably going to make sense sometime during the day to do the live show. Like we're going to fly in Thursday night, get our feet under us Friday, right? And maybe kind of figure it out. And then I would think like Saturday is a good day to noon Saturday or something. But I'll post everything everywhere so you'll know our live show.
We will definitely stay in touch with that. And look to here to talk to you next week.